Hello everyone, today we are starting the story of the dark priest who seduces his mother to get stronger. Please leave a like as today's like goal is 1500 likes. Hit the subscribe button for more videos. So let's start the story without any delay. The tale begins with a young green-haired boy sprinting desperately from his pursuers. An arrow pierces his leg, causing him to collapse onto the ground. An elderly man, trailing closely behind, draws his sword and commands his cohorts to scar the boy. With a swift motion, the old man lifts his sword and severs the boy's head, letting blood spatter. He commands his followers to search the boy, and one of them discovers a relic in his possession, which he presents to the old man. Angrily, the severed hand of the goddess, the mother of corruption, whom the young boy served, inches its way toward him. The severed head of the boy speaks, soothing the mother of corruption, urging her not to be angered and assuring her that corruption is non-existent. He clarifies that it was necessary to die once here, while the mother of corruption grows increasingly enraged over the disappearance of the relic. The body of the young boy stands up, while the mother of corruption is reassured by his severed head that if she is concerned about the divinity within the relic, doesn't she think, he would have already collected it. With determination, the young boy picks up his severed head and reattaches it to his body. He emphasizes that's exactly why there would have been no need to have a useless tail following him, though he admits to losing some money in the process. Then a flashback takes us to his life as he reached his late 20s. It made him too tired and busy to play games, and that is why he always made compromises with reality by using an editor. Despite his fatigue, he recalls persistently playing a game, though he can't quite remember its name or why he had purchased it in the first place. Nevertheless, he persisted playing it in order to as the Priest of Corruption. The Priest of Corruption is a character class within the game that is widely regarded as the most challenging to advance in and play. It is notorious for its difficulty, both in terms of gameplay mechanics and performance outcomes. Despite these inherent challenges, every time the boy engaged with the game, he felt a surge of excitement and anticipation. After completing all the class quests and exhausting all available resources for advancement, he finally achieved the esteemed title of Priest of Corruption and fell into the game. The hand that keeps screaming at him akin to a death metal singer belongs to the goddess he serves, the Mother of Corruption. His servitude to her began 5 years ago when he found himself suddenly inside the game, adorned only in a robe and with her hand resting on his chest. Despite the strangeness of the situation, he felt an inexplicable connection to the hand due to the overwhelming presence of the Mother of Corruption. This connection enabled him to accept his transportation into the game relatively early on in his journey. As per the game's description, the Priest of Corruption was a genetically enhanced human, modified by drugs to possess heightened physical capabilities and senses. Therefore, because of these modifications, the boy now has a body that can only be slain by divinity itself, and maybe there was something wrong with his brain, as despite formerly being unable to tolerate the sight of blood, the current gruesome scene unfolding before him has no effect on him. However, the only notable issue he faces now is the loss of sensation in his body, rendering him unable to feel or taste anything. Later, inside an adventurous guild, he receives his ID as Priest Marnak. He inquires at the receptionist if there is any work that he can take on. The receptionist tells him to wait, mentioning that there should be work available for a priest dedicated to serving the goddess of preservation. Meanwhile, Marnak reflects that, having arrived in the northern city of Gis, he decided to impersonate a member of the Order of Preservation. He contemplates that if he was under a different god, the respective god would have become furious and marked him the moment he impersonated a member of another order, a mark visible only to members of that deity's order, a seal of punishment. However, in contrast to other deities, the Mother of Corruption exhibits benevolence in such matters. As the enemy of all, the Order of Corruption harbors animosity toward Marnak, who, as the Mother's sole follower, is universally despised. Eventually, the receptionist procures a job for him. Reading the details, Marnak learns that it involves hunting bandits or monsters. The Lord of Gis has issued this task due to the recent disappearance of farmers en route to Gis. Those who uncover the cause and defeat are promised a reward of 30 nips of silver per head. The receptionist is taken aback by Marnak's ability to read, as most mercenaries would request her to read everything for them. Marnak, being humble, says that it is not that special a skill. He reflects that the moment he fell into this world, he was able to read and write the language of this world. Setting the paper aside, Marnak sheepishly requests a portion of the reward up front before embarking on the job. As he travels, he converses with the mother about the receptionist's talkative nature, recalling receives the advance money from her, albeit with the warning of a fine for tardiness. She teasingly inquires if he has already fallen in love, provoking his ire as he denies any such occurrence. Suddenly, a voice from behind addresses him by name. It's Pierre, a local from the area. Pierre extends an invitation for Marnak to converse, though Marnak remains silent. Nonetheless, Pierre continues to chatter, discussing various topics such as the well-being of his parents and rumors surrounding the recent kidnappings. Abruptly, Pierre is summoned to the front of the group and departs, leaving Marnak behind. The Mother of Destruction urges him to eliminate everyone, but Marnak refuses, driven by his need for money to endure the winter comfortably. He also queries the Mother about her opinion on the individuals present, asking her to rate them based on the fingers. Subsequently, a hand symbol appears near each person, indicating different numbers of fingers raised. The fingers represent the amount of divinity each person is worth, with one finger equating to 10 divinity, 2 fingers to 100, and so forth. Marnak understands that if he manages to accumulate 100,000 divinity, he will gain an authority. Thanks to the system, he was able to absorb the divinity of a holy relic and attain 1 authority. The Mother of Destruction has said that if he can collect the divinity of every relic, all of his wishes would be granted. Contemplating his first wish, Marnak decides that he would wish for his sense of taste to be restored. Pierre returns, having apparently been reprimanded for talking too much. Marnak reassures him that he doesn't mind, but their conversation is interrupted as the party is suddenly attacked by bandits. In a split-second decision, Marnak protects Pierre by hurling him out of harm's way and intercepting the bolts meant for him. The Mother suggests that Marnak feign death and ambush the attackers when they approach, deeming it the easiest course of action. However, Marnak defiantly rises to his feet, seizing a sword and declaring that he'll handle things his own way. With determination, Marnak charges towards the assailants, swiftly dispatching one by severing their head. The captain of the bandits orders his men to deal with the rest while he confronts the priest. He attacks Marnak with all his might. Undeterred, Marnak pushes the captain aside, refusing to yield. Marnak requests the Mother to rate the captain based on fingers. However, he doesn't receive a moment's respite as the captain immediately engages him in combat. The Mother informs him that he is worth 2.5 fingers of divinity, a realization that shocks Marnak as he considers that this game is very unbalanced as a mere bandit is on the same level as the ranger who slit his throat. As the battle intensifies, the captain summons his full strength and shatters Marnak's sword. Mockingly, he points out that this is precisely why he always uses frost steel. Then, unexpectedly, the captain proposes a truce, suggesting that since this was their final task in the area, they should call it quits and depart with smiles on their faces. Marnak defiantly refuses the captain's offer, proposing an alternative. If they leave immediately, he will go easy on them. The captain is taken aback by the suggestion, questioning whether they would have simply walked away. Before Marnak can respond, he is abruptly struck by an arrow to the head, much to the captain's delight. As his fellow bandits join him, the captain scolds them for their tardiness, expressing his belief that the priest would have killed him in the interim. However, one of his companions admonishes him to stop messing, citing their eyewitness account of the captain shattering the priest's sword. Listening to this, the captain boasts of his precise calculation in striking, and the group applauds him enthusiastically. Then the captain inquires if they have dealt with the remaining foes, receiving confirmation that they have. Suddenly, to their shock, Marnak rises from the ground and addresses them. He questions their surprise, asking if they've never witnessed someone surviving being shot in the head with an arrow. Clearly, they haven't. Marnak begins to pray to the Mother, a green aura beginning to emanate from him. The captain orders his men to shoot, but the bolts prove ineffective against Marnak. Seeing this, they attempt to flee, only to find themselves blocked by an invisible barrier known as the Line. Marnak explains that it is the authority that must be activated by the Priest of Corruption before utilizing his powers. It prevents targets from escaping while also concealing the divinity of corruption. Marnak adds that he particularly enjoys this authority. The captain suggests attempting to slice through the barrier, but his idea is swiftly halted as a gigantic monster descends upon him, crushing him beneath its weight. The captain's men, desperate to flee, beg Marnak for forgiveness. Marnak, unfazed, addresses the monster, offering everything but their heads to satisfy its hunger. Returning to his party, he finds them decimated. The Mother urges him to collect the divinity from the bodies, but he refuses, citing the potential suspicion it would raise from the guild, prompting an investigation. Spotting Pierre, who is barely clinging to life, Marnak sees an opportunity to bolster his reputation by saving him. He beseeches the Mother to halt the progression of Pierre's wounds. Meanwhile, in an undisclosed location, an unknown blue-haired priestess holds a cup, from which Marnak has sucked the divinity out. She queries a man about the fate of the individual who stole the artifact, learning that the thief was swiftly beheaded but left behind due to a lack of supplies. The priestess announces her intention to embark on a pilgrimage, much to the man's surprise. When questioned if it's due to prophecy, the priestess confirms, adding that she also has someone to meet. It is revealed that almost 10 years ago, all religions received a prophecy, a warning of the end wearing the husk of life and descending upon the world. Meanwhile, Marnak carries Pierre back to safety. There he is met by the guards at the city gate, who swiftly take Pierre from him to transport him to receive first aid. As they carry Pierre, the guards marvel at how the priest managed to carry someone as heavy as Pierre with just one hand. Then the red-haired receptionist approaches Marnak, assuring him that he has permission to enter the town from the guards. As they walk together, she comments on Marnak not appearing particularly strong at first and requests the heads he is carrying, noting that the guild will handle them. She also inquires if he has a place to sleep, offering her own home if he doesn't. This proposition causes Marnak to blush, much to the dismay of the mother, who vociferously protests and tells Marnak to murder. Later, as Marnak rests on a comfortable bed in the Mercenary Guild guest room, he clarifies to the mother of corruption that he harbors no devious intentions towards the red-haired lady. She simply meant that he could sleep in the guild's guest room. A knock at the door interrupts their conversation, and it's the receptionist informing Marnak that there's something he needs to attend to. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, the mother covertly expresses her disdain by giving the receptionist the middle finger under the sheets. The receptionist then reveals that the Lord wishes to see Marnak, leaving him puzzled as to why the Lord would want to meet him. She explains that it's likely because the captain of the mercenary group he was associated with is actually the Lord's half-brother. Later, Marnak arrives at the Lord's residence, and he is greeted by the Lord of Gis, Tread on Filion. The Lord inquires if Marnak witnessed his brother's final moments and offers him some tea while smirking. The mother draws a giant X when she first sees the Lord. Curiously, Marnak questions the Lord about life as a human, referring to him as a demon. He deduces that the mother drew the X because the Lord is not a living being, and amongst them, there is only one being that can take the form of a human. It's the demons. Marnak explains that demons, while incredibly powerful, are unable to act independently. Instead, they must make deals with beings of this world in order to exert influence. This is why demons are drawn to and manipulate all living beings. However, the gods harbored resentment towards demons because they took as much as they gave. Consequently, the gods declared to their followers and all living beings that these beings would be labeled as demons, branding them as inherently evil. This declaration initiated the priest's quest to hunt down demons. Reflecting on this, Marnak recalls that the demon contractor was a challenging class, often avoided by people. He remembers this vividly because it was the second class he played. Meanwhile, the Lord sits in silence for a moment before finally speaking, revealing that his brother's death has allowed him to welcome an important guest. The Lord expresses skepticism towards Marnak's identity, accusing him of deception and referring to him as crawling bait. However, Marnak boldly reveals his true identity as a priest serving the mother of corruption. The Lord is taken aback, surprised that there is still a living son of corruption. He urges Marnak to take a seat, mentioning that they are the only ones present here. The Lord explains that he didn't call Marnak for any particular reason. However, he asks Marnak to inform him about his half-brother's death and promises to compensate him for his efforts. Reflecting on the event, Marnak considers an unfortunate event. Lord explains that his brother had been struggling with work and that the Lord tried to give him some work under the table. However, tragically, this decision resulted in his brother's death. The Lord reflects that this thing is called life, and it's quite difficult. Marnak observes that the Lord appears visibly saddened by the tragic turn of events. Later, as Marnak counts the gold coins, he converses with the mother, expressing that he wasn't swayed by the allure of gold. Rather, he sees it as a symbol of the Lord's genuine desire to uncover the truth. The mother teasingly calls him a greedy priest, but Marnak vehemently denies this accusation. He adds another perspective on gold, noting that it doesn't decay, which seems to offend the mother. Marnak urges her not to jump to conclusions and asks for the opportunity to finish speaking. Continuing, he explains that there's something else that doesn't deteriorate and endures like gold, the love he holds for her. The mother is left speechless as Marnak gently guides her hand to rest against his chest. He reassures her that she will always be the most important thing to him, dispelling any worries she may have. Marnak returns to the guild, where the receptionist instructs Marnak to greet the priests from the teaching sect. Marnak inwardly expresses his reluctance to deal with them at the moment. However, his eyes widen in surprise as the mother tells him that one of them holding a holy relic. One of the priests approaches him, praising his dedication as a priest of preservation. Introducing himself as Orvis, he identifies as the weight on the scale of retribution. Standing beside him is Cornu, a man with a horn protruding from his head, and Petina, a woman. Marnak also introduces himself to the priests, and the receptionist remarks that they will be staying at the guild just like him. Marnak sees this as a perfect opportunity to potentially steal the relic from them in the future. As they excuse themselves, mentioning their visit to the Lord of Gis, the receptionist hints that their guild often provides shelter to priests like them for a small price, leaving Marnak wondering if he will have to pay as well. She clarifies that she didn't allow him to stay out of personal interest, but she does have her own intentions. Getting close to him, she whispers her request for him to cast a blessing of preservation on their food so that it won't spoil. Marnak retreats slightly, puzzled by why she got so close just to make that request, and she wonders the same. Interrupting their conversation, Priest Cornu remarks on their apparent camaraderie. Marnak questions why Cornu hasn't gone to the Lord's mansion, to which Cornu explains that he stayed behind to avoid causing trouble due to his race, as many northern lords don't have favorable opinions of him. The receptionist defends the Lord, noting that despite his cold demeanor, he is competent at his job and has significant support in Gis, advising against speaking ill of him. As they delve into discussing the Lord, Marnak inquires about the sudden decision to visit him. Cordy reveals that it's because of the prophecy. He explains that Orvis believes that the husk mentioned in it is possibly a demon, prompting their investigation within the Lord's mansion to search for any demonic presence. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, the relic Orvis is holding suddenly lights up, indicating that the Lord is actually a demon. Orvis and Petima quickly assume defensive positions, but before they can react, the mansion explodes, revealing the Lord's true form, a demonic monster. Marnak and Cornu witness the chaos unfold, observing Priest Orvis casting the scales of retribution and delivering a precise strike to the beast's head, resulting in another explosion. Cornu attributes this to Orvis's hammer of punishment, realizing they need to go and assist them. However, Marnak bolts in another direction and urges Orvis to go first, promising to follow him closely behind. He rushes to the Adventurers Guild, seeking assistance from the receptionist regarding the location of the medical center where Pierre is being treated. With the information in hand, he swiftly picks her up and dashes out of the Adventurers Guild with determination, landing and sprinting towards the medical center. The receptionist spots the monster as it makes its way to the center of the city. Marnak urges her to forget about it for the moment and instead directs her to tell him the location of Pierre. She complies, leading them to Pierre, who is safe and sound resting. Marnak is determined not to let Pierre die after barely managing to save his life. He picks Pierre up and asks the receptionist to hold on to him as he can't carry her with both arms anymore. She complies and they resume running. As they flee, the receptionist mentions a secret passage, indicating it will lead to the outskirts of Gis. She pokes at it, noting it is locked shut. This proves to be no challenge for Marnak as he smashes the door with his foot, showcasing his strength. The receptionist takes note of his impressive display. Marnak sets her down, instructing her to take Pierre and flee if the situation worsens. He knows he must go and help. Arriving at the battle site, Marnak finds Cornu, who has been mortally wounded. He inquires about the other priests, and Cornu informs him that Petina has died, her right arm and leg completely severed. Cornu recounts how Orvis managed to stab it into the beast's head, indicating that if Marnak can take that sword and plunge it into the creature's brain, it should perish. With these words spoken, Cornu passes away. Marnak collects divinity from him, gaining 100 divinities. Meanwhile, Orvis continues his battle against the demon, managing to strike the sword with his hammer, driving it deeper. Marnak notices this and jumps into the fray, spotting the white sword Orvis is using. However, the monster suddenly rolls with all its might, throwing Marnak off. Despite his mother's concern, Marnak reassures her that he is fine. Fortune seems to smile on him as he gets thrown right next to the holy relic they were using. Seizing the opportunity, Marnak grabs the relic and places it on his chest. He addresses the Mother of Corruption, informing her that he is giving her another holy relic and, in return, requests a new authority, asking her to release her seal. The Mother of Corruption complies and Marnak gains 10,000 divinity points, bringing his total to 11,723. Curious about the effect of the newly lifted seal, Marnak asks what has changed this time. It becomes apparent that the severed hand of the Mother of Corruption can now move further from his location to help him. He jokes that the effect seems pretty minuscule. Since he is not in the best of situations, Marnak once again prays to the Mother, offering her 10,000 divinities in exchange for a new authority. This time, he gains the Text of Corruption, the effects of which are simple yet powerful. Upon activation, metaphysical green tattoos appear all over his body, amplifying his physical abilities. He notes that this will be particularly useful in his current predicament. Meanwhile, his broken leg is also healed in the process. As he looks around, he spots Orvis next to him, surmising that he must have been thrown off too during the chaos but did not survive. Marnak collects divinity from him, gaining 1,000 divinities. The demon continues its rampage, much to Marnak's bewilderment. He finds it odd since the priests who provoked its anger are all dead, and it shouldn't be acting this way anymore. Marnak recalls that demons aren't creatures driven by instincts, but that he notices something and activates the Text of Corruption, warning his mother that things might shake a bit. Rushing to the demon's location, Marnak jumps a large distance. The demon attempts to strike him, but he swiftly dodges. Climbing atop the beast, he spots the white relic sword. Suddenly, the demon tries to repeat its previous maneuver to throw him off, but Marnak anticipates this and jumps down, narrowly avoiding the attack entirely. Marnak notices a bit of blood escaping from his mouth, indicating that his condition is worsening faster than he expected. Climbing atop the beast once more, he realizes that when he activates the text of corruption, his body begins to rot from the inside, necessitating a swift resolution to the situation. With a sense of urgency, he jumps and grabs the sword, recalling Kornu's words about pushing it in. However, Marnak decides to do the opposite and pulls the sword out instead. As he does, a ray of blue light emits from the wound, enveloping the demon in an explosion of light, ultimately eliminating it. With the demon vanquished, Lord Tredin remains at the location. Marnak approaches him and inquires if he is awake now. The Lord responds, expressing gratitude, stating that it was a real blessing to have met him. Marnak dismisses the sentiment, explaining that it all happened because the white sword had been suppressing his mind. Extending his hand, Marnak offers assistance, joking that it's his 2 golds worth of help. The Lord acknowledges this with gratitude, remarking that the assistance was definitely more than worth it. Meanwhile, at the site where Marnak was decapitated, the blue-haired priestess searches for his body with the assistance of the ranger who committed the act. However, the body is nowhere to be found. The ranger speculates that it may have been dragged away by monsters or wild beasts. Acknowledging this possibility, the priestess thanks him for his assistance but also asks him about the names of nearby cities. Marnak is led by a butler through the rubble to a nearby house where Lord Tredin warmly welcomes him, expressing that Marnak seems to grow more handsome every time he sees him. Grateful for the sentiment, Marnak thanks him and Tredin acknowledges Marnak as their demon slayer, emphasizing his gratitude. Marnak jests that the demon is alive and well right in front of him, to which Tredin humorously responds that he needs to live too. Reflecting on the events that followed, Marnak recalls how Lord Tredin shared with the town that it was Marnak who defeated the great demon and saved him. As a result, Marnak was given the nickname Demon Slayer. Even though Marnak thinks that the nickname Demon Slayer doesn't really fit him, Erin, the receptionist, has developed a special fondness for it. She refuses to stop calling him by that name in public, attracting the attention of everyone around. People come close to him, constantly praising him, but Marnak clearly doesn't like it. Speaking to Tredin, Marnak remarks on the smooth movement of his prosthetic arm and leg, noting that it seems odd. Tredin explains that he only moves like this in front of Marnak. He limps when around other people. However, to move naturally like this, he needs to pay a significant price. Intrigued, Marnak wonders what it might be, and Tredin reveals that the hairs on his head will lose their strength and start falling out in a few months, leaving him with a bald head. Marnak imagines and makes a joke about it. Lord Tredin also inquires if Marnak has a week's worth of time available, to which Marnak confirms that he does. Tredin reveals that he received a job specifically requesting Marnak's assistance concerning the holy relics of the ancient empire. The reward for this task is 5 whole nips of gold paid in advance. Furthermore, if they deem Marnak's help significant enough, it will grant him one of the undiscovered relics. This opportunity appears to be a gold mine for Marnak, so he readily accepts the job. He reflects on the ancient empire, which ended the era of distraught mages and brought unity to the continent. In the current age, where their technology has been recreated, the holy relics of that empire are known as precious treasures containing powerful abilities. In other words, many items that are considered high-ranked in this world are relics of the ancient empire. Later, Marnak exchanges greetings with the group he will be accompanying on this mission. Carmen Valtis, the one who requested this job, extends a handshake. Marnak recognizes his name, and Carmen confirms that Marnak's thoughts are accurate. Anthony Valtis of the Black Wolves is indeed his father, and Carmen is his illegitimate child. Marnak contemplates that a principled man like Anthony wouldn't have engaged in other relationships after losing his wife, but he deemed it inappropriate to broach the topic. Instead, he asks Carmen to introduce the people behind him, and Carmen complies. Carmen introduces the mage in the robe as Tunisa, who will serve as their guide to the ancient empire, and the big guy as Sukas, hailing from the Unicorn tribe, who is his dependable ally. Sukas shakes hands with Marnak, calling him the Demon Slayer. Marnak expresses embarrassment at the nickname, but Sukas reassures him, stating that there's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's a mighty compliment that he has earned. Carmen intervenes, suggesting that now that they have introduced each other, they should get going as it will take them 2 days to reach the site. 2 days later, they make camp and relax for the night. Carmen notices that Marnak isn't sleeping and asks if he has any interesting stories. Carmen assumes that someone like Marnak has met his fair share of women during his life. Marnak responds that he doesn't have any interesting stories, likening himself to fresh snow. When Carmen asks what kind of women he likes, Marnak replies that he prefers women who choose to be by his side. Carmen agrees, stating that there's nothing better than seeing one's lady sleeping peacefully beside them. However, he adds that personally he believes a woman's heart is the most important. Marnak concurs. Carmen adds to it, saying that the heart resides within one's chest, and for it to be welcoming, the chest must be large enough to support it. He tells Marnak that he is a man who likes women with big chests. Marnak remarks that having a clear vision of what he wants isn't a bad thing, but he suggests refraining from discussing such matters in front of women. Carmen reassures him, affirming that he wouldn't do so, especially because they're having this conversation together. He further notes that whenever he converses with Marnak, it feels like he's speaking with an old friend. Marnak agrees, and they proceed to spend the entire night engaged in conversation, to the dismay of the mother of corruption. The following day, they reach the ruins where Tunisia, holding a key, announces that she will open the way. Marnak reflects that entering the ruins was surprisingly straightforward. They simply needed to locate the key and proceed to the coordinates inscribed on it. Afterwards, they decipher the passage written in the ancient language on the key. Since only mages can read such ancient texts, their involvement in an exploration like this is deemed essential. He is an exception, however, as he is a player and possesses this ability too, but he keeps it secret. In this world where he has no relations, acquiring the key is exceedingly challenging. They enter the ruins, and Carmen observes how remarkably preserved this place is, better than most ruins. Marnak gazes upwards, finally getting the chance to be inside the ruins he had only seen in photos before. He is truly mesmerized. The mage notices his reaction and scoffs. They proceed inside the main building, where a towering door stands, adorned with ancient text. The mage notes that they need imperial blood to pass. If not, they should prepare for battle. The door slowly opens, and an army of creatures rushes them. Seduces is the first to strike, with Tunisia not far behind as she blows away a large number of them with a single spell. Marnak pulls out his blade and begins cutting them down. Suddenly, the mother tells him to watch out from behind, and he swiftly blocks the last creature's blade. An arrow pierces its head, killing it instantly. Marnak thanks Carmen for the assist. Suddenly, he hears a commotion, with Seduces berating Tunisia for using her spells so recklessly. She notes that it was the fastest way and the creatures all died in the end, so what's the issue? Seduces tries to tell her something, but Carmen stops them, causing him to go sit in a corner, still angry. Carmen commends Marnak for his skills, saying that the title of Demon Slayer suits him. Marnak apologizes for displaying such brutish actions as a priest. He also compliments Carmen's bow skills, who says that he has been practicing with it since he was little. Suddenly, Tunisia says that they should move as she has plenty of mana left. Seduces hears this and gets furious, saying that they barely got any rest. He argues that she might not need any since she uses spells, but for melee fighters like him, rest is imperative. Tunisia adds that everyone else would agree with her, and at this point, it just seems like he is trying to make a scene. Carmen orders them to rest before they begin moving, and that's the end of it. Marnak reflects on the nature of mages in this world, noting that they are usually pompous and often extremely rude. Becoming a mage is easy, as one is born with the ability. Although there are variations from person to person, those born with mana always awaken to their abilities once they reach a certain age. Upon awakening, knowledge regarding the ancient language is beamed into their brains, enabling them to learn ancient spells. Using mana, they can break the laws of this world. However, this process often results in them becoming iron-willed and uneducated, as they dislike learning new things, believing their heads are already filled with knowledge. As a result, many mages behave like idiots. Marnak acknowledges that even among mages, Tunisia is considered more well-mannered than most. After they finish resting, Carmen suggests moving to the next area. However, the passage suddenly closes and a gigantic metal golem is summoned. Marnak realizes that the enemies they faced before were too weak for a ruin like this. This golem appears to be the real threat. Tunisia urges them to step aside and begins casting a spell that shakes the ground. The golem's blue gem suddenly glistens as it looks at Tunisia. Carmen spots this and urgently urges her to move out of its way. However, before she can react, the golem fires a beam into the roof of the room. The distraction causes Tunisia to hesitate, giving the golem enough time to close the gap. With one powerful punch, it smashes her into a pulp, leaving nothing behind. Seduces watches in horror, and Marnak screams for him to get out of the way. But it's too late. The golem smacks him into the wall, killing him instantly. Marnak quickly asks Carmen if he wants to live and advises him to tuck his chin in. Without waiting for a response, he swiftly knocks Carmen out and summons in the beast of corruption to handle the golem. As the giants begin their clash, Marnak absorbs the divinity of Seduces and Tunisia. He then leaves Carmen in a safe corner, noting that it will take a long time for the beast of corruption to finish the battle alone. Activating his text of corruption, he rushes into the fray, targeting the blue gem embedded in the golem's head, certain that breaking it will have significant consequences. Marnak leaps onto the beast of corruption, providing himself with enough space to strike the crystal, shattering it. The golem dematerializes and Marnak momentarily believes the threat is vanquished. He offers congratulations to the beast of corruption for its victory, but their triumph is short-lived. Multiple golems materialize out of thin air shortly afterward. Later, as Carmen regains consciousness, he inquires about their fallen comrades. Marnak confirms their unfortunate demise. Carmen mentions that they're deceased companions when he recruits. He expresses his guilt, attributing their deaths to his greed. Marnak reassures him, stating that they were hired with full knowledge of the risks inherent in such expeditions, absolving Carmen of blame. Marnak also mentions that they are currently beyond the back door, surprising Carmen. Although Carmen is curious about how they got there, he refrains from prying, realizing that Marnak had previously knocked him out to keep it a secret. He expresses gratitude for Marnak's assistance, acknowledging the debt he now owes him, which he hopes to repay in the future. Marnak graciously accepts this, emphasizing the need to keep moving as he hasn't yet defeated all of the metal golems. It seems that there is a sliver of truth in his words, as Marnak indeed left the beast of corruption to fight the 3 golems that fell from the sky. He then somehow threw Carmen into the room, barely managing to escape himself. They walk through the corridor and reach the end of the ruins. They are standing behind a huge ancient gate. Marnak tells Carmen to feel free to have a look around. There inside the room lie 2 treasures, a sword and some type of necklace. Carmen approaches Marnak with a favor to ask, requesting the necklace, promising a handsome reward in return. Marnak inquires about the necklace's ability, and Carmen explains that it is called the Bloodline Pathfinder. By spilling some blood on it and thinking of a bloodline, the necklace will use the blood as a cost to point in the direction of the respective bloodline. Marnak contemplates this smiling, and Carmen confirms his suspicions, telling him that he is looking for his mother, whom he has never met before. Marnak agrees to Carmen's request for the necklace, asking to take the sword in return. Later in the night, as they sit together around a campfire, they both reflect on how narrowly they escaped. Carmen then removes the necklace and asks Marnak, as a priest, to bless it. Marnak obliges, although he's clearly faking it. Carmen then cuts himself slightly and puts his blood on the necklace. Suddenly, a ray of red light emanates from the necklace and the blood takes shape, pointing somewhere. Carmen is glad that his mother is still alive, and Marnak congratulates him for it. Carmen thanks him profusely, expressing his intention to repay the debt. He then asks one last favor, to work together until he meets his mother. Carmen suggests that since Marnak is heading west anyway, they can visit the capital together, where Carmen can reward him for the job. Carmen mentions that of course he will be sure to pay off all the travel expenses. Marnak smiles, considering Carmen's proposal. He knows he has more than enough reasons to do that, and although he would love to accept, Carmen would see through any ulterior motives right away. Meanwhile, Carmen gets nervous as Marnak is taking too much time to take the decision. However, to his relief, after a moment's thought, Marnak smirks and takes his hand, agreeing to support him on the journey to find his mother. The next day, back at the guild's guest house, Erin is a bit furious that Marnak is leaving just like that. She tells Marnak to let her see his hand. Marnak hesitates, but eventually extends his hand. Erin gives him a silver mercenary plate, noting that it usually does not come out this quickly, but she has made sure to do everything she could to get it ready in time. Marnak thanks her, but she doesn't want to hear that. Instead, she mentions that he should say "see you soon," as that would be like a promise. In his head, Marnak apologizes to her, acknowledging that he lives the life of a wanderer and would never be able to fulfill this promise. Erin sighs, knowing that if he continues to live like this, he won't get a girlfriend and will die alone. So she says "see you soon" instead, also mentioning that the opportunity to meet again will come a lot faster than he expects. Curious, Marnak asks what she means, but she shuts him up by placing her finger on his lips, saying that this is punishment for leaving. Marnak then goes to talk with the Lord Tredden, who is now as bald as an egg. However, he sees it as a truer form of humanity. The Lord mentions that when he got the news that Marnak is heading for the capital, he arranged a few things for him. He then hands Marnak a recommendation letter. The Lord notes that he would have liked to pay him, but he is dead broke due to having to pay for all the repairs and gifts. However, the letter will prove useful, as if he gives it to a friend of his, that person will help. He also advises Marnak to ask for help if it's absolutely necessary, as that person is pretty hard to deal with. Marnak thanks him for the gift, and the Lord says to think of it as a form of gratitude. He also wishes him a good life, stating that it's too short to not enjoy. After a few days, Carmen and Marnak are still on the trail, and they note that they will reach the next town, Kelton, in about half a day. Marnak thinks about how his mother only allowed him to travel with Carmen because he is a 3.5 rated human. If he manages to harvest him, he would gain 10,000 divinity, allowing him to obtain another authority. Plus, Carmen has the potential to become a human worth 4 fingers, But despite the potential benefits, he likes Carmen's personality and would prefer him to be alive. Suddenly, he pulls out his sword, noting that there's blood very close and it's rapidly approaching. Out of nowhere, a giant snow spider emerges from the ground, ready to feast. Carmen tries to retaliate with some arrows, but just as the spider is about to attack, Marnak jumps in, cutting some of its legs. Smirking and proud of his sword, he notes that he will have to find a place to clean his sword the next time he uses it. He strikes the spider once again, noting that it splatters too much blood and flesh. Meanwhile, the blue-haired priestess visits Tredin, the Lord of Gis, who apologizes for the current state of the mansion. Tredin then inquires why is she here, mentioning that it is very rare for the blue flame of the Torch sect to go on a pilgrimage like this. Instead of replying, the priestess gives him a drawing, asking if he has seen the man depicted in it. The drawing crudely resembles Marnak, and the Lord asks why she wants to see him. She notes that it's for personal reasons. Lord Tredin mentions that he hasn't seen him and suggests she leave as he is quite busy. As she leaves, he thinks that she must not be looking for Marnak with any good intentions. However, he guesses that Marnak will be fine even if he doesn't tell him about the priestess looking for him. Back with Carmen and Marnak, they begin dissecting the spiders they have defeated under Carmen's command. He wants the venom sacs from all of them, noting that the effects of its anesthesia are so great they are pretty useful in different situations. Plus, it can be pretty good to apply on arrow tips as poison and also fetch a high price in the market. Marnak asks how Carmen knows all this, and Carmen explains that he participated in many monster hunts, giving him plenty of practice. Covered in blood, Marnak tells Carmen to let him take care of the spiders and teach him how to get that venom sac. Carmen mentions they still have some road between them and Kelton, so he'll teach Marnak, and they can handle it together later. Later that day, they both arrive at the gates of the town, surprising a guard who questions how they got there. Confused, they ask for details, and the guard explains that the town has been blocked off for the last 3 days due to monster attacks. He adds that despite the attacks, there are no corpses to be found. Carmen finds this odd, especially since they were attacked by snow spiders. It would be unusual for those creatures to leave no traces behind. Meanwhile, another guard arrives and informs them that Lord Stern wishes to see them. They comply, and the Lord warmly welcomes them, recognizing Marnak's reputation as a demon slayer. They discuss the monster situation, and the Lord reveals that it's being organized by a worshipper of an evil spirit. Marnak notes that a single individual wouldn't be capable of closing the gates of an entire city. The Lord reveals that other priests have deduced there are at least 4 sects involved in this scheme. He ponders why Kelton, an ordinary town with nothing notable going on, has become a target, especially after he got appointed as the Lord. Crying, the Lord mentions that if his father was still alive, he would have thought of a way of getting them out of this situation. He tells them that despite having sufficient supplies and high troop morale, the issue lies in other cities being unaware of the situation. Hence, they need someone to spread the news, a task considered almost suicidal at this point. Marnak offers his assistance despite the perilous nature of the mission. Later in his room, Marnak faces criticism from Mother for accepting the job. She suggests that he should have slapped the Lord and walked away, to which Marnak replies that she is going too far. He mentions that at the very least they will be receiving a rare item for cleaning his sword from the Seekers of Flow, which can only be found in the western desert regions, so now they won't have to worry about cleaning after using Slayer. He reflects that perhaps the real reason for accepting the task is because he believes it might be a precursor to the commencement of the main quest. The reason Marnak came to that conclusion is because 4 different sects are working together. He reflects that while the title of evil spirit that these sects worship seems intimidating, it doesn't hold much meaning as it's just a label thrown around by the main gods. However, among the worshippers of these evil spirits, almost none are mentally sound. Unlike sects under the main gods, sects that serve evil spirits rarely cooperate with each other. So the fact that 4 of them are working together is highly unusual. Later, as they ride out to another town, the suicide squad of Marnak is attacked by spiders and various other creatures. Marnak smirks and tells Carmen that he will draw their attention. Carmen is puzzled by his decision, deeming it too dangerous even for him. Marnak notes that if they continue to be pursued, they'll be caught. He then throws himself off the horse, deciding to wait for reinforcements. Carmen screams for him, but Marnak just smiles, asking if he looked cool while saying that. He crashes into the snow, and Mother notes his interesting acting. He smiles, saying that he'll take that as a compliment. Marnak suggests to the Mother that they should begin looking for those evil spirit worshippers who are hiding behind the covers. Marnak charges in and slashes the beasts left and right, leaving behind their corpses in a pool of blood. He notes that if getting dirty is so frequent, he might just have to carry a bathtub with him. Mother agrees. Marnak walks towards a cave opening and notes that they probably already know he's coming but aren't greeting him. Quite rude. Inside, he finds the things that were missing from the attack carriages, noting that the monsters must have carried them there. He also discovers a body that has been sucked dry by a snow spider. Marnak notes that he understands when one enjoys a nice meal, but to use the leftovers as decor is quite a strange design choice. Mother urges him not to let his guard down, but he assures her that he won't. However, he also wonders just how many people they manage to eat. There are too many bodies for them to consume within 3 days. He raises the question if they perhaps raising offspring. Marnak continues walking until he finds a giant cave, noting that the tunnels are also pretty big. Marnak smiles, noting that there's also a lot of divinity here. Out of nowhere, a gigantic spider comes out and looms over him, while its children descend from the walls. The gigantic spider jumps into action, and Marnak asks the Mother of Corruption to draw a line of corruption for him. She does so, and also summons the Beast of Corruption. Marnak tells the Mother of Corruption that today he will be sacrificing the gigantic spider for her. In an instant, the Beast of Corruption jumps into action and lands a good blow on the spider. Marnak also activates the Text of Corruption, but the spider is not finished yet as it counterattacks and pushes the Beast of Corruption into the wall. They continue to fight, and Marnak notes that it's almost double the size of the beast, so he needs to help out somehow. He slashes through the other spiders and thinks that he can sense a certain energy coming from within the Spider Queen's body, so he has to make sure he doesn't damage it. Suddenly, a spider attacks from behind, and he slashes it in half. This gives him an idea to not waste the divinity in the Queen's body. He just has to cut off all of its legs. He orders the Beast of Corruption to run straight ahead as he will help it, but it must make sure to stop the Queen from moving. The beast does so and grabs what he can. Running along the wall, Marnak swiftly swings down. Observing that the Queen is merely a spider, he realizes that all he needs to do is sever the thinnest part of its body. He then strikes that spot repeatedly, causing the Queen to screech in agony. As he reaches the final part, he delivers one powerful blow, slicing the Queen in half. The Beast of Corruption promptly seizes the upper half of his body, slamming it into the ground, while Marnak lands gracefully. The beast shoots him an angry look, prompting Marnak to apologize for leaving it behind previously. Surprisingly, this seems to appease the Beast of Corruption. A woman emerges from the Queen's mouth, cursing fervently. Marnak smiles gently, as he knew there was a person inside. The woman demands to know who he is, accusing him of ruining her plans. She questions if he's another follower of an evil spirit like her. She curses Marnak, emphasizing how long it took for her to gain control of this thing. Ignoring her inquiries, Marnak calmly asks about the purpose of surrounding Kelton, but she refuses to answer. Without hesitation, he impales her with his sword, his demeanor turning stern. He demands to know why she is surrounding Kelton. She screams in agony, but he remains indifferent, repeating his question. With a depraved smile, she refuses to divulge any information, even in the face of death. Marnak, still smiling, respects her wishes and swiftly cuts her head clean off. As a result, he gains 1,000 divinity points. He questions that he ponders how many worshippers will tell them the truth behind everything. The mother tells him that there are at least more than 3, so he chooses to believe there are 4. As Marnak walks back to Kelton, he finds engulfed in flames. Inside, the Lord appears to have suffered a horrific death. Meanwhile, a black-haired woman named Parna points at the dead Lord, remarking that this pig is better at hopping away than she thought. She then questions if he's some kind of bunny pig thing, implying that just because he is a lord, those who were trying to protect him wasted their precious time. Her fellow blonde man inquires about the incarnation. However, a woman with an eye patch cautions that it's unstable and extracting divinity from living beings isn't easy. She taunts that they lost a few rats, partly due to someone's actions, raising a finger at Parna. She adds that not only do they need to carry out their plan now, but their chances of success are also very low. Growing frustrated, Parna asserts that she did her utmost, but the monks from the teaching sect kept bothering her. She suggests that if Layla had sent them a couple of spiders, they might have had better luck. That way they would have caught that arrow-shooting bastard who managed to escape. The woman with the eye patch adds that Layla hasn't arrived yet, and it's not the first time she's been absent. Even if she were to assist them with a few spiders, she would likely just play around with the bodies. The man urges them to stop fighting, warning of the imminent deployment of troops following the escape of the arrow-shooting man. He stresses the years invested in their plan, insisting it must succeed. Parna acknowledges her own dedication but expresses her inability to tolerate criticism from the man. She questions whether they believe she allowed the escape willingly and resents being berated over the loss of a single rat. She also alludes to a past encounter with the man, insinuating neglect on his part. Fed up, the woman with the eye patch abruptly departs. In response, the man tells Parna to cease her outbursts and promises to hold Layla accountable for losing the rat. Parna smiles in response, indicating that it's sufficient for her. However, her expression changes abruptly as Marnak slashes off the eye patch woman's head. He then instantly proceeds to cut the man in half as well. Observing the unfairness of their actions, Marnak acknowledges that they've been forced to resort to extreme measures due to their ability to manipulate authority. Parna, puzzled by Marnak's soliloquy, watches as he slowly regenerates from the text of corruption. With a smile, Marnak poses a familiar question to her. What's the purpose of surrounding Kelton? They step outside, and Parna presents him with a mass of growing flesh. Marnak acknowledges that she explained everything once he asked, finding the story quite straightforward. They utilize all the city's inhabitants as sacrifices to create the ball of divinity, called the incarnation, enabling their current actions. Despite needing at least 5 more days of preparation, they were forced to rush their plans due to Carmen's successful escape. Marnak revs up his chainsword, much to Parna's dismay. She asks him what he plans to do, and he responds that he wants to kill the monster which consumed the flesh and blood of others before it awakens. Parna urges him not to proceed, warning of the danger if the being wakes up in an unstable state. Despite her pleas, he proceeds anyway. She screams that the being will wake up in an unstable state, and indeed, it slowly rises from the mass of flesh, screaming in agony until it emerges and immediately strikes Marnak. The mother notes that there is a holy relic inside the creature, which he already knows. While extracting the creature's tentacle from himself, he declares his intention to create a new authority and sacrifice the creature to her. Parna protests that his plan won't succeed, but before she can finish speaking, Marnak cuts off her head, gaining a hefty amount of divinity. With the divinity extracted from the Lord included, he now possesses a total of 8,592 divinity, just shy of the 10,000 divinity needed to acquire a new authority. He realizes that attempting to cut down the creature will only result in its regeneration, and sustaining further injuries will lead to his eventual defeat. He deduces that since it is like a blob of meat, there is not a clear weakness like the Spider Queen, and this leaves him with only one choice. He tightly grips his sword, puts it back, and starts running, confusing both the creature and the mother. The creature, upon witnessing this, screams the only words it knows. It hurts. Marnak proceeds through the town, gaining 1 divinity from each corpse he encounters. Despite his efforts, the creature continues to chase after him. He reflects that it feels like a game, where either the creature will catch him or he will manage to acquire a new authority. As the creature screams, Marnak is momentarily halted in his escape. He observes that even its voice carries a divine quality, marking it as a walking disaster. Dodging its attacks, he calls out to the mother for assistance. The beast of corruption is summoned over the creature, slamming it into the ground and causing nearby houses to tremble. Observing the fight, Marnak realizes that 1 beast of corruption won't suffice, but it just needs to hold on a little longer as he'll return soon. He dashes towards a burning building, knowing he needs the bodies of well-trained soldiers or knights at least. However, upon entering, he finds that too much time has passed for Mother to extract divinity from the bodies. With his divinity count at 9,237, he knows he needs just a bit more. Suddenly, a wall bursts open, unleashing a myriad of tentacles that Marnak barely manages to deflect. The monstrous creature attempts to pounce on him, having learned a new word, pain. It appears to have grown significantly from its fight with the beast of corruption. For a few moments, silence descends, interrupted only by the wind. The creature extends its hand, unleashing numerous tentacles, but Marnak manages to cut them, seizing the opportunity to counterattack. However, the creature proves too fast, catching him midair and using the momentum to hurl him outside with tremendous force. Mother inquires if he's all right, and he confirms, though he also remarks on his luck. The creature has thrown him precisely into the midst of the main battle. The creature screams while Marnak urges the mother to take all of the corpses, which she promptly does. As the divinity grows and grows, it finally reaches the threshold of 10,000. Addressing the mother of corruption, Marnak offers her the 10,000 divinity, and in return, she grants him a new authority. Everything around is swallowed by a sea of black, including Marnak. Within this darkness, he speaks with the creature, informing it that now it will experience much more pain. As the creature launches its attack, Marnak reveals that this new authority is called the Whole of Corruption. It decomposes all living beings that step inside, including himself. However, he possesses the ability to use the text of corruption to choose which parts decompose first. As he uses the Whole of Corruption, the creature's arm is the first thing to fall off, prompting Marnak to express his curiosity about which process is faster, his regeneration or its decomposition. With that, they engage in a final battle, and Marnak emerges victorious. He severs the creature's head and offers the holy relic to Mother and asks her to light a seal. As the Mother of Corruption lifts another seal, Marnak suddenly finds himself outside, but Mother is nowhere to be seen. It's only when he looks behind that he notices she has manifested a body, a little girl. Slowly approaching him, the Mother of Corruption asks Marnak why she's in a child's body. Marnak gently caresses Mother's head but reminds her that she should be the one to have this knowledge, not him. He then inquires if she's unable to extract the divinity from the creature's body, as it would be a waste if it went unused. Despite her efforts, Mother indicates that she can't. Marnak smiles reassuringly, telling her it's fine if it doesn't work out. He suggests she come back with him instead. As she hugs him tightly, he notes that due to the mixture of divinities within the creature, it's now impossible for her to extract them. However, with the seal lifted by the holy relic, he utilizes the 10,000 divinity from it to acquire another authority. The sky lights up in a greenish hue and a beam descends upon them both. Marnak questions the meaning of this new authority. However, Mother simply smiles and advises him to use it as much as he needs. It is revealed that this time he has received the curse of corruption, an authority that can only be described as evil. With this curse, all living things within its range, which spans the size of a small city, will slowly rot away. Marnak ponders the implications, recognizing that while it might be acceptable to use against a city filled with villains, he's not comfortable with the idea of killing innocents for divinity. Additionally, he contemplates why the holy relic containing Mother's sealed divinity was within an incarnation. Was it merely coincidence, or could Mother's divinity have been one of the main forces in creating that thing? Suddenly feeling weak, Marnak wobbles and collapses, realizing he's been hit with too many divinity-enhanced attacks. The Mother approaches him, tears streaming down her face as he slowly drifts away. When he wakes up, Carmen is caring for him, but Marnak's expression dims as he notices Mother isn't nearby. He asks about his things, growing agitated when they're not immediately provided. However, his agitation subsides when Carmen hands him Mother's hand, sensing it may hold significance for him. Marnak expresses his gratitude profusely, but Carmen humbly dismisses it, stating it pales in comparison to Marnak's valiant sacrifice. Without it, Carmen acknowledges he wouldn't have made it out of Kelton in one piece. Marnak inquires about their location, and Carmen informs him they're still in Kelton. This prompts Marnak to ask how long he's been asleep, to which Carmen replies, 10 days. Concerned, Marnak asks if there were any survivors. A somber silence fills the air until Carmen breaks it, revealing that the only person left breathing in Kelton is Marnak himself. Meanwhile, close to Kelton, a man attempts to flee from something but is swiftly injured with a knife to the leg. His companions shudder as the blue-haired priestess approaches the injured man. Desperately begging for his life, he pleads with her, but she coldly observes that he can no longer walk due to his injury. The man insists that he can still walk, his pleas continuing in vain. However, the priestess remains unmoved. She swiftly decapitates and burns him whole. She then turns to the other men, ordering them to walk, and they obediently comply. Eventually, they arrive at Kelton's gates. The men, who are revealed to be a notorious group of criminals known as the Snow Bear Bandits, fall to their knees and demand to be taken to jail. The priestess acknowledges their request, and the guard agrees to escort them. However, she learns that the Lord of Kelton has been slain by worshippers of some evil spirit, delaying her reward by a day. Curious, she inquires about the fate of these worshippers, and the guard informs her that priest Marnak killed all of them, including the worshippers and the monster they created. He further explains that Marnak had been unconscious for 10 days due to the battle, but had just woken up. The blue-haired priestess inquires if the supposed archenemy of evil spirit worshippers, Marnak, is currently staying in Kelton. Inside a local tavern, spirits are high and people are cheering and rooting. Meanwhile, the blue-haired priestess comes there seeking confirmation of Marnak's presence. Upon hearing his name, the patrons erupt into even louder celebrations, especially honoring him as the savior of the town. The jubilant atmosphere reaches even outside the town, where Carmen and Marnak hurry away as fast as they can. Marnak recalls Lord Treden's warning about the relentless pursuit of the priestess, who seems determined to find him at all costs. Grating his teeth, he realizes that all he can do now is run. Mother urges him to be cautious as they flee. Marnak reflects on the dangers, acknowledging it's why he left Kelton. Staying there with that woman would have been plain madness. He's well aware of her status as one of the most dangerous humans he knows, rated at 4.5 fingers. He expresses gratitude to Carmen for agreeing to leave on such short notice. In the cover of night, Carmen reassures him, saying there's no need to worry. He'd rather depart whenever the opportunity arises than risk garnering even more attention from the city. Marnak's smile widens as he contemplates his fondness for Carmen and his personality. 2 weeks later, while they're still journeying through the plains, Carmen spots a carriage bearing the crest of the Iramel family. Marnak inquires if it's referring to the Iramel, the High Lord of the South, and Carmen confirms it, mentioning that the white camellia flower seal is their family crest. Considering whether they should greet them to avoid appearing impolite, Marnak hesitates. However, Carmen disagrees, suggesting that since they don't see the Lord's flag displayed, there might be a child or relative in the carriage. It's probably best to quietly bypass them. They do so, but as they approach the rear end of the carriage, Marnak senses something amiss and quickly grabs Carmen's attention. He points out that there's someone tied up inside the carriage. The supposed carriage guards draw their weapons upon hearing their whispers. One of them even remarks that if they had feigned ignorance, they could have continued their journey unscathed. However, now they forfeited their right to live. Without hesitation, the supposed guards charge in, causing the large shockwave. Marnak swiftly decapitates one, while Carmen takes out another with a perfect headshot, paralyzing the remaining kidnappers. Marnak confronts them, questioning how they dare swing their swords in such a crooked manner. He informs Carmen that there are only 8 kidnappers left. The commander screams at his men from a safe distance, demanding they quickly finish things off as they don't have time for delays. With only 2 kidnappers remaining, they just need to charge in all at once. However, moments later, Carmen shoots the leader in the head, leaving him as the last standing from the kidnappers. Meanwhile, Marnak brings out and unties the lady in the carriage. She starts to vomit. Carmen inquires if Marnak was able to get a name out of her. Marnak pats her back gently and explains that he would like to, but the situation doesn't permit him to ask any questions. He's uncertain if she was drugged or something, but she's currently unable to move around well. Carmen then asks if her eyes had a golden hue to them. Marnak confirms it, noting that she's most likely a lady from the Irimal family. The lady demands Marnak to stop patting her back as it's only making her feel worse. She raises her head and expresses her gratitude for their rescue, while also introducing herself as Dekia Irimal, the eldest daughter of Kalto Irimal, the smiling young master. Carmen considers that if she's telling the truth and is indeed the daughter of the smiling young master, she's most likely a mage. Marnak contemplates that if she's both a noble and a mage, she'll likely possess an incredibly haughty demeanor. Carmen suggests they leave that observation for later, whispering to Marnak that Dekia has a really big heart, a sentiment with which Marnak agrees. Mother interjects with a curse at both of them. Dekia then redirects their attention, expressing her desire to know the names of the individuals who rescued her. She points to Marnak, mentioning that she can clearly see that he is a priest. Marnak introduces himself as a priest who worships the goddess of preservation. Dekia remarks that his name isn't too bad and requests his assistance, as she still has difficulty walking due to the lingering effects of the gas they made her inhale. Carmen extends his hand, affirming that he'll assist her. He introduces himself as the son of Sir Enthus Valtis, Carmen Valtis. Dekia questions his certainty about helping her, expressing concerns that if nosy onlookers were to see the Black Prairie Dom of the Valtis family traveling with her, rumors would spread, even reaching the capital. She assumes he has someone worried about him there. The least she can do for her saviors is to be considerate, she suggests. Both Marnak and Carmen's expressions shift, surprised that this noblewoman, also a mage, is capable of showing consideration for others. Carmen wonders if they can inquire about how she ended up in such a situation in the first place. Dekia explains that she lacks concrete evidence regarding the real culprit, but she's convinced that the kidnapping was planned and paid for by her brother, Derso Irimal, who always despised her. Carmen expresses surprise at the notion of Dekia's brother orchestrating such a scheme. Dekia reveals that she recently received a marriage proposal from the Dragon Kingdom. Given that she's next in line to succeed the title of family head, her brother sought to use the offer as an excuse to dispose of her. Marnak considers that while that might be one motivation, especially for noble families, mages are generally unwelcome. Nobles often despise mages vehemently. More specifically, noble families detest the idea of birthing mages into their lineage. There are several reasons for this aversion. Firstly, teaching manners to mages, with their natural tendencies, proves extremely challenging. Moreover, mages tend to be self-centered most of the time, and the power they wield as nobles often leads to troublesome accidents that are difficult to manage. The second reason lies in an old, somewhat outdated folk tale passed down through generations, predating even the ancient empire. It recounts the age of twisted mages, instilling a strong and rather irrational belief that mages shouldn't wield real power. Due to this tale, most species in the world harbor a deep aversion to mages assuming positions of authority. Marnak reflects that is why when Dekia told them that she was pursuing one of the 4 High Lord positions of the Northern Kingdom, he was intrigued about how she would carry out such an impossible task, unless she were to eliminate her own flesh and blood, her brother herself, to seize such a powerful position. Marnak ponders on it, assuming she had indeed shared the tale at least once before. Dekia interrupts, asking if they are paying attention to her story. Carmen acknowledges her suspicion that the people around her were attempting to sell her off to the Dragon Kingdom, to which Dekia confirms his assumption. Marnak explains that they tried their best to listen to her story, but she has already recounted it 3 times. He hopes she understands why they couldn't focus on her narrative entirely. Meanwhile, as Dekia had been engrossed in her tale, her meat had been burning all this time. Marnak offers her his portion and takes the burned one from her. Dakia expresses gratitude for this act of kindness. Marnak remarks that Dakia will fare better at grilling next time, but only if she reduces how much she talks while cooking. Later, Dakia asks if she can present them with an offer. Marnak anticipated this already, and she proposes that they take her to Beatus, which is part of the Iramel family territory. In return, she promises to pay them both their weight in gold. This proposition catches Marnak by surprise, as he knew that High Lord families were on a different level altogether. However, it appears they are also very generous. However, with his current client being Carmen, Marnak realizes that if they were to escort Dakia to Beatus, his journey of finding his long-lost mother would be delayed. Additionally, he had managed to save the Mother of Corruption's hand from being burned into nothing. If he chooses to continue moving west, he will respect his choice and give up on the gold. Meanwhile, the mother advises him to eat more to increase his weight to get more gold, but Marnak can't believe she is this greedy. He asks the mother even if she likes gold that much, would she really want her own son to be obese? Later, Carmen clenches his fists and accepts the deal, acknowledging that since they decided to get further involved, they will take responsibility for everything until the end. That's the only way to live up to the Valtis name. The next morning they set out, arriving at a village where they hope to bathe and relax in some hot water after traveling extensively. They head to a tavern where Carmen books some rooms. Meanwhile, Marnak and Dakia discuss his bag. Carmen informs them that their rooms are at the end of the third-floor corridor and instructs them to hurry up and get washed so they can have a meal together. After they finish, they gather at a table with a feast laid out for themselves. Marnak thinks that on days like these, he would have wished to have a sense of taste. Suddenly, he hears a commotion as a few bar patrons harass a barmaid by grabbing her arm and telling her to stay. Another man intervenes, demanding they stop, causing a scene at the establishment. The man wonders how he created a scene in the first place, as he didn't embarrass her or anything. All he did was try to ask her to pour more drinks and listen to their story, which he believes is something she should do since it's her job and all. Carmen notes that a fight will most likely break out, so they should go and help. Marnak says that one of them already went over there, so they most likely should. Meanwhile, Dakia punches the harasser so hard he jumps from his chair and finishes him off with another attack. The man's friends are extremely angry at her now, but before they can do anything, Marnak takes care of them by slamming the head of one onto the table, leaving him without a tooth and quite dazed. The bar workers clap while Dakia thanks Marnak, who notes that there is no me for thanks. Carmen, while strangling the last remaining harasser, tells her that she should inform them if she's going to do something like this. He notes that they are a party, so they should act like one. Dakia explains that ever since she was little, she was unable to hold back whenever something unjust was going on. Marnak looks at her and thinks that she doesn't have an anger management issue, but rather a righteousness management issue. Carmen gives Marnak a coin bag from the harasser, and Marnak in turn gives it to the owner as he can pay for the damages with this. The owner thanks him profusely, but Marnak says that it's not needed as it's money from those idiots anyhow. Later that night, Marnak knocks on Dakia's door. When she opens it, however, he instantly grabs her and puts a knife near her head. From here on, she will listen and be quiet at all times to prevent Carmen from waking up. He then reminds Dakia of her earlier declaration about not letting injustice go unchecked. However, he instructs her to ignore it next time as they are currently being chased. They must evade notice. He threatens her if she repeats this behavior, he'll be forced to injure her and deliver her to their pursuers. However, that outcome would be too tragic, so he trusts that from now on she will discuss things she wants to do with him and act wisely. He then tells her to nod slowly if she understands. Dakia does so, prompting Marnak to release her and bidding her a good night. The Mother of Corruption notes that he's being too hasty. He understands her perspective, but this is something he had to address before a larger issue arose. He tells Mother that they will find out now whether Dakia Iramel truly has a compulsive injustice disorder as she claims. Meanwhile, inside a mansion, Valtis Draco, the third prince of the Dragon Kingdom, receives news that the mercenaries he sent failed to capture Dakia. Before him stands Hilden, the Eastern Regional Manager of the secret organization Isla. Hilden informs Valtis that they will need more funds to continue the quest. Valtis scoffs at the request for additional money, pointing out that he already provided plenty with no results. Furious, Valtis orders Hilden to come closer and slaps him hard. He demands an explanation for the need for extra funds, warning that if the reason is due to excessive losses, Hilden will be dead. Hilden thinks of his wife and children, knowing he must do anything to survive for their sake. He immediately bows and mentions a priest who worships the goddess of preservation, a man named Marnak. Valtis wonders how a mere priest could so easily disrupt their plans. Hilden urges him to listen, explaining that Marnak is no ordinary priest. He single-handedly defeated a demon that transformed into a gigantic monster in Gis using only a single sword, and recently, in Kelton, He killed a powerful monster created by evil spirit worshippers who sacrificed the entire population of Kelton. On top of that, he accomplished all this alone and earned the title of evil spirit's arch-nemesis. Valtis hums, pondering the situation. The rumored priest and Valtis' oldest son have captured Dakia. He adds that if this is the situation, he will pay extra but expects them to succeed this time. Hilden feels a surge of happiness knowing he did it and can finally think of his wife and kids without fearing for his life. Later that night, Marnak reflects, filled with regret over his actions towards Dakia while feeding the mother. He wonders if should have been less harsh, as Dakia seemed like someone who would understand. However, the mother gestures him not to worry about other women. Marnak acknowledges that even if she is a woman, which he knows she despises, she is still their client. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Marnak asks who it is, and it turns out to be Dakia. He invites her in, and she slowly enters, apologizing for interrupting his meal. Marnak reassures her that it's nothing to be worried about. She asks if she can sit down and if she has something to discuss with him. They both take a seat, and she asks if the reason he warned her like that was because she's a mage. Marnak looks down for a moment, then responds quietly with a simple yes. Dakia acknowledges that she already suspected this was the reason, as the way he looked at her is something she's grown accustomed to. Most people have been hurt by mages, so they often regard her with wary yet spiteful eyes. She tells him that this experience was still a first, as his eyes were filled with outright hatred towards her, but what Marnak spoke of was about how she should do better since they will be companions from now on. Marnak blushes momentarily in response. Dakia adds that most people who regard her with such disdain often harbor malicious intentions towards her. She admits that if she witnesses another unjust incident like the one that occurred today, she won't be able to ignore it as easily. However, from now on, she pledges to discuss such matters with him, as he has suggested, since they are companions. With that said, she prepares to take her leave, bidding him a good night while he ponders the situation. Before she can depart, he captures her attention, acknowledging that he was overly harsh and rude towards her. Dakia smiles deeply, noting that it's the first time he's looked at her with genuine kindness, which makes her very happy. Marnak asks if that's the case, to which she inquires if they've made up now without holding any grudges. Marnak confirms that they have, expressing that he isn't harboring any ill feelings towards her. Dakia winks at him playfully, expressing her anticipation for where their adventure will lead them next. As Dakia leaves, Marnak feeds the mother again, reflecting that, in the end, mages are people, regardless of anything else. He tells Mother that her foolish son is finally confronting the truth he had been avoiding for so long. The mother interrupts, urging him to stop dwelling on such matters and to feed her more, to which he laughs. Later that night, a few mercenary goons swarm the tavern, demanding that they hand over Marnak immediately, threatening to kill everyone in the establishment if their demand isn't met. Inside a camp, a mercenary captain named Sajida is engrossed in reading a message. As he reads, a sense of unease washes over him. Despite the directive to capture the maiden of the Irimal family, renowned for her distinctive silver hair and golden eyes, Sajida finds himself fixated on the enigma surrounding the referenced priest. Contemplating the significance of the evil spirit's arch-nemesis title, he deduces that the priest in question must be Marnak. Suddenly, one of his subordinates calls him, saying that the priest they have been looking for is here, but the woman from the Irimal family isn't. Surprised, Sajida asks where the priest is now, hoping he isn't starting a fight or anything. Suddenly, they hear a scuffle outside with a man demanding to be let go. Sajida rushes outside and is met with the sight of Marnak holding one of his subordinates by the neck. The others stand ready with swords drawn, but Sajida quickly intervenes, ordering them to drop their weapons. When they hesitate, he's left with no choice but to scream at them, demanding immediate compliance. Reluctantly, they withdraw their weapons, leaving Sajida to fume inwardly at their apparent incompetence, considering them as if they were slacking off during his briefing about the request. Approaching Marnak cautiously, Sajida takes a deep breath and kindly asks if he is indeed the infamous priest Marnak. Despite the tension, he mentions that there are many good rumors circulating about Marnak. Marnak confirms his identity, and Sajida pleads with him to release the man he's holding, noting that he's starting to foam at the mouth. Marnak complies, releasing his grip, and expresses his desire to meet the captain of this mercenary corps. Sajida hesitates for a moment before explaining that the captain of the Redbeard mercenary corps is right in front of him, indicating that he's been conversing with him all along. He invites Marnak inside and offers him some strong alcohol, but Marnak politely declines, mentioning that he's not one to enjoy drinking, though he appreciates the gesture. Sajida finds this somewhat annoying, hoping to ease the conversation with a drink, but he resigns to the situation. Marnak notes that he heard something from his colleague who came looking for him earlier, referring to those mercenary goons who swarmed the tavern that morning, that Sajida wanted to meet him. Marnak questions if it pertains to the scuffle that occurred the previous evening. Sagitta smiles, contemplating his next move. Should he get straight to the point or continue to gauge Marnak's reactions by subtly implying that their target is the maiden from the Irimal family? Their target is the maiden from the Irimal family, with silver hair and golden eyes, because they have been struck by a powerful curse from the organization called Isla. Sagitta reflects that the situation is fraught with difficulty as Marnak is rumored to be a terrifying individual, and those rumors appear to hold true. He dislikes any confrontation with him. Frustrated, Sagitta curses and blames Vice Captain Pelwin for the entire situation. Suddenly, Pelwin staggers into the camp, clearly intoxicated, and learns about the priest's visit, finding it amusing. He enters the tent where Marnak and Sagitta are conversing and directly asks Marnak if someone from the Irimal family is among his party. Marnak confirms that there is indeed a woman from that family in their group. Pelwin sees this as an opportunity and menacingly declares that Marnak should listen carefully. He will hand over the woman and be allowed to leave unless he wants to face a gruesome death. Without hesitation, Marnak draws his sword. Before Sagitta can react, the Jigachad swiftly cuts off Pelwin's hand, which lands on the ground with a sickening thud. Pelwin's screams of agony echo throughout the quiet mountains. Marnak addresses Pelwin, remarking that he finds the situation quite funny and strange. He doesn't recall ever telling him his name directly, yet Pelwin says it with such an affectionate tone. While Pelwin screams in pain for help, Marnak coldly inquires about the person who wanted to track him and his party down. Sagitta, realizing what's about to unfold, is rightfully horrified. A mercenary screams that their vice captain's hand has been severed, prompting them all to converge on Sagitta's barracks to demonstrate to the priests that they aren't pushovers. They charge in, but as soon as someone enters the tent, their head is swiftly removed. This frightens the mercenaries, but they gather their courage and encircle the tent. Sagitta looks at Pelwin, who is now completely sober and begging for help. Meanwhile, Marnak raises his sword, recognizing that Pelwin won't be providing any answers anytime soon, so he decides to dispose of him. Suddenly, Spear appears, blocking Marnak's attack. He's quite surprised by this, as he didn't expect Sagitta to take action. Sagitta explains that he wasn't going to intervene, that the relationship he and Pelwin share is a deep one, going back 15 years. The mother urges Marnak to use caution. Sagitta attempts to strike him with the spear, but the Jigachad swiftly parries, managing to cut the tip of it. As a last resort, Sagitta pulls the tent over him. This angers Marnak, and he swings once. Realizing the imminent danger, Sagitta runs as fast as he can, warning the others to do the same. However, it's too late. Heads begin to roll one by one from a single swing. Those with quick reflexes flee in terror, fearing the same fate. Blood paints the scene in horror, and amidst the chaos, Sagitta grabs another spear, cursing the ill-fated day. The mother orders Marnak to take action, but he's already resolved. No matter what, he vows to pursue the one who ordered their tracking down to the edge of his blade. Sagitta hurls the spear at him with all his might, but the Jigachad swiftly deflects it using the corpse of one of the fallen mercenaries. With his sword, Marnak slices through the corpse effortlessly and pursues Sagitta. However, Sagitta manages to evade just in time and grabs another spear. He then engages Marnak in a one-on-one duel. Their weapons clash with such force that a small shockwave ripples through the air. Amidst the fight, Sagitta instructs his men to retrieve Pelwin from the tent and provide medical attention while he is fighting the priest. As their weapons fly into the air, Marnak seizes the opportunity to charge up a deadly punch, striking Sagitta directly in the arm, causing the snow around them to erupt in multiple directions. Marnak looks at Sagitta and smiles, relishing the rare opportunity to fight someone of this caliber. Sagitta grits his teeth and commands his men to fire. Realizing there was an archer all along, Marnak retreats, knowing that an arrow to one of his joints would severely hinder his ability to fight. They both sit in silence for a moment. When Marnak looks around, he notices that they are completely alone. The mother wonders what's happening, and Sagitta screams at the cowards who dared to abandon him. Marnak asks Sagitta if he intends to continue fighting, pointing out that he has been left behind. Without a second thought, Sagitta drops his spear and declares his surrender, promising to reveal everything if his life is spared. They proceed to bury the dead, and when they reach Pelwin, Sagitta remarks that he always wanted to beat that bastard to a pulp one day, but now that Pelwin is gone forever, he feels strangely empty. Marnak asks if Sagitta hates him now. Sagitta responds by asking if he would be killed if he admitted that he did. Marnak then questions the wisdom of keeping someone who hates him alive. Sagitta smiles and agrees, acknowledging that Marnak is right. He admits he isn't great with words, making this difficult for him. He explains that mercenary's job is to kill and eventually be killed, so there were times when he had to work alongside those who had killed his companions. Naturally, this didn't mean he was on friendly terms with them, but he didn't rush at them with an axe to enact revenge either, so he doesn't hate Marnak at all. In fact, he feels a bit lonely now. He tells Marnak that this mercenary group was failing anyway, so nothing of real value is lost. Marnak asks Sajida what his plans are now. Sajida admits he doesn't know. It's been 15 years since he was completely alone, and he's a bit lost on what to do since all he knows is how to fight. He assumes he'll end up doing mercenary work once again. Marnak ponders the situation for a moment and then suggests that if things are like this, why not meet an employer who pays well? Sajida is puzzled by this unexpected suggestion. Later, Marnak takes Sajida to meet Dakia back at the tavern, where they sit down for lunch. Dakia appears visibly upset, and her gaze is fixed on Marnak. Unable to comprehend the situation, Sajida scratches his head in confusion. Marnak inquires of Dakia whether there might be some unwashed blood on him or something, but Dakia denies it, her tone carrying an unusual quality. The mother screams at Marnak that cleanliness isn't the issue as he cleaned up thoroughly. Marnak senses a prickliness in Dakia's tone, as if there were thorns in her voice. Marnak asks if Dakia's demeanor is because he left without saying a word. She responds, affirming that he knows exactly why, especially after their deep conversation last night. She believed they had established a much deeper bond, but it appears she misunderstood. He had told her that they needed to discuss things before anything happened, but it appears that this doesn't count for him, as he left on his own accord without any sort of discussion. Marnak asks her if she has ever taken someone's life. This catches her off guard, and she admits that she hasn't. The Giga Chad explains that's why he went alone. He believed he had to be uncompromising in this situation, knowing it could lead to deadly confrontations. Dakia argues he could have at least informed her, as she slept soundly and almost had breakfast without knowing anything. Marnak reflects that he went alone so she could do just that, but promises to keep her informed from now on, no matter what. She accepts his apology, stating they are now even. Suddenly, Carmen bursts through the door and shouts that Marnak has went to negotiate with the mercenaries on his own, and they should gear up and help. However, upon spotting Marnak safe and sound at the table, Carmen feels surprised and embarrassed. Sajida waves at Carmen, who inquires about his identity. The Giga Chad explains that he's just a new mercenary hired by the princess, suggesting they introduce themselves while they have the chance. Dakia turns to Marnak, expressing that she is sure he trusts Sajida, but she hopes nothing bad will happen between them. Sajida reassures her, promising that nothing bad will happen. Carmen remarks that he's quite pleased to have a sturdier companion around. However, he announces that he will head to the village smithy now, as he ran here while selecting arrowheads. He tells them that the sun is already up, so they will leave early tomorrow morning. Somewhere in Erratico, a purple-haired girl whines about when they are coming and asks just when that will be. A man questions if they are sure they are coming here and wishes they would arrive faster before he goes insane from all the needless whining. The girl, still on the ground, remains very impatient for their arrival. The short-haired woman in the room sighs and assures them that they will arrive soon enough, as she has been checking their location regularly and is certain of it. The purple-haired girl comes next to the woman and asks once again if she is really certain they are coming to Erratico. The short-haired woman, exasperated, says she has already told her plenty of times and wonders why she doesn't want to believe her. The girl explains that she believes her completely, but if they do not come soon, she is dead to her, and she will have to sadly mince her into small pieces and feed her to the dogs. Later, the party arrives at Erratico, which Dakia is extremely glad for. Now she will be able to take a warm shower, something she hasn't done in a while. A man spots them and starts calling out for Marnak as he saw his priestly attire. He asks if Marnak really is a priest, and Marnak confirms that he is indeed one. The man grabs his hand tightly and begs him with every fiber of his being to go to the Trumpeter of Rest and tell them to stop summoning the undead, as they don't even listen to the Lord at this point. He promises to pay handsomely for this intervention. Marnak responds, expressing doubt that they would simply stop just because he told them to, as that would be too easy. The man notes that Marnak is a priest, so he should at least try and talk to the Trumpeter of Rest. Carmen and Sajida exchange wide-eyed glances. The man explains that he and his companions are all at their limits as the undead walk around every night like ghouls, and are starting to become too terrified. He begs Marnak to at least talk to the Trumpeter and ask him to stop this madness. After pondering the situation, Marnak notes that he will, but the man shouldn't expect too much to change. The man thanks him as many times as his lungs allow him to. Marnak informs his party that he will be helping this man and will catch up with them later, so they should go find some lodging. Dakia notes that they will do just that. While walking through the dark forest, Marnak reflects on the uniqueness of the Trumpeter of Rest among the priests of various gods. Unlike other deities who choose priests and bestow authority and power upon them, the Trumpeter of Death and Rest selects a random human, granting them both authority and power without apparent reason. These chosen individuals, all bearing the title Trumpeters of Rest, dedicate their lives to tending to the dead and all matters concerning them. The rationale behind this peculiar selection process remains a mystery, unsolved to this day. All that is known is that when the need arises to awaken the dead from their eternal slumber, the trumpeters emerge in locations with numerous corpses. They blow their soundless trumpets and lead the deceased as silent soldiers. He continues that, of course, there were people in power who didn't like this phenomenon. That is a given. But nobody even dared to lay a finger on the undead led by the trumpeters. It makes sense, though, as if one were to go up against an army of undead that can infinitely raise, they would surely meet their end, as there is nothing they can do against that. Most, if not all, trumpeters of rest live their lives in complete solitude and accompany the undead, their true companions. They are akin to a natural phenomenon that should be studied. Eventually, he arrives at the trumpeter's location and greets him. The trumpeter doesn't speak a word, allowing Marnak to continue. Marnak addresses the trumpeter, expressing that he is sure many have come and gone through here, but he wasn't in the position to reject a favor, and he has simply come to say the same things as many others have. He asks the trumpeter if he doesn't think it's about time he hangs up his hat and leaves this place for another. As the trumpeter may already know for most normal people, the sight of moving undead is very unpleasant and mortifying to witness. Or perhaps there is another reason behind his desire to remain here, as they don't usually stay in one area for too long, though, so that must be it. The trumpeter gazes at him and warns that it's the worshippers of evil spirits who will bring about many deaths. He gestures behind Marnak, indicating that all of this will unfold in Eradicate. Marnak inquires about the presence of evil spirit worshippers in the town, to which the trumpeter sadly confirms that has already begun. Right then, a colossal beam descends from the sky, targeting the town directly. The mother of corruption urges Marnak to hurry, as they don't have much time left. He tells himself that this time it won't be like last time in Kelton, where everyone died. He vows that this time things will not go as they want. Meanwhile, the purple-haired girl, a devil worshipper, screams in frustration that the toy she wanted to play with is not here. She turns to the woman with her, accusing her of promising that he would be here, but he isn't. The short-haired woman notes that she verified that his companions have entered the city, so she only needs to wait for a moment, as they will find him soon enough. The purple-haired girl demands that the woman just die already, but the man with them urges her to stop, believing that her toy has just appeared. The girl turns around and asks where, and the man points him out. Marnak stands amidst the flames, filled with utter rage. The purple-haired girl is ecstatic that they finally found him, and Marnak begins to smirk from ear to ear, as he didn't expect to encounter these bastards in a place like this. The sight of these bastards make Marnak burn with rage, and the mother of corruption urges him to calm down. He ignores most of the mother's pleas, something he has never done before, and revs up his chainsword. He acknowledges that she's correct and he needs to calm down, but he's not going to concern himself with trivial matters this time. He informs Mother that, as she's well aware, the mage bastard standing before him is the one who long ago killed both him and his savior. He emphasizes to Mother that he is someone he needs to exact revenge on, no matter the consequences. Marnak reminisces about a time when he had nothing but countless worries and unnecessary words. Each day was a struggle to earn something, and on the days when he couldn't earn enough, he had to endure hunger, no matter how intense it was, a common occurrence for him. It was during one such day, amidst an unusually intense blizzard, that he encountered his savior, Shantux. Shantux was a peculiar-looking individual, not quite middle-aged nor old. He was very easygoing, but he proved himself to be serious when the situation demanded it. When Marnak woke up, he didn't ask him a single thing. All he said was that he could stay as long as he needed until he fully recovered and was ready to leave. He was a priest who worshipped one of the gods, the goddess of preservation, and additionally a gravekeeper who lived on the outskirts of a nearby town. One eventful day, while assisting him in his gravekeeping duties, Marnak grew really curious and asked why he saved him without asking for anything in return. He gently smiled and answered with a simple, because he just wanted to. That warm smile, full of forgiveness and love, held a special place in Marnak's heart even to this day. Shantux was a treasure of a man, always offering help without expecting anything in return. He firmly believed that one should never need a reason to help others. Inspired by Shantuk's kindness, Marnak aspired to become more like him, more compassionate. About a year into that peaceful and altruistic life, during winter precisely, he encountered a man passed out in the snow, in the same position he once was. Recalling how Shantux had saved him, Marnak rushed to help. However, it was this decision that turned out to be a mistake, one that continues to haunt him to this day, as he realizes he should have never saved that despicable mage. Upon receiving their most kind help, the mage had fully healed and with a sinister smile on his face, confessed right in front of Marnak that he was a worshipper of the evil spirits. Then, with rather simple magic, he tore Marnak into shreds while still wearing that sinister smile. When Marnak surprisingly woke up once again, the hand that he had stored away out of curiosity had somehow escaped his inventory and started emitting a green energy while gently caressing his cheek. Naturally, he went to check inside the house and had to face the dire consequences of his foolish actions. What he found inside was the corpse of his dearest friend, Shantux, who had been brutally slaughtered by that bastard of a mage. In the present, Marnak revs up his sword, now engulfed in raging fire representing his inner rage. The mage finally remembers him after thinking for a while. He is that gravekeeper whom he brutally murdered just because he was bored. However, he is pretty sure he died back then, as he killed him with a spell quite easily. He remarks to Marnak that since he's alive now, all this discussion seems rather pointless. Changing the subject, the mage inquires about the priest outfit, noting it was worn by the other gravekeeper, yet Marnak now wears it. Then he casually mentions his arm, revealing it to Marnak. It's the very arm he's using now, and it has served him well for the past 3 years, treating him quite nicely. This infuriates Marnak deeply, as he has harbored a grudge against this man for all these years, yet now he mocks him just as he did back then. Excited and unaware of what is going on, the purple-haired girl rushes next to him, noting that she heard he was very, very strong and she has been waiting for someone like him. In the blink of an eye, the Jika Chad cuts her clean in half and clashes with the mage's barrier. The bastard mage observes that Marnak is quite different from the rumors they have heard. While Marnak demands he stop talking, his face runes glistening a fluorescent green. His mother urges him to finish this, and he summons enough force to break through the barrier, allowing him to cut off the hand that was stolen from him at that time. The purple-haired girl, seemingly unharmed now, expresses her admiration for Marnak. Surprised by her sudden presence, Marnak wastes no time in swiftly decapitating her, which she oddly finds to be amusing. Meanwhile, the mage activates the scales of retribution on his leg, and Marnak waits to see what it's all about. With a menacing grin, the mage stomps the ground with all his might, triggering an explosion resembling a cross. The force pushes even the girl behind Marnak back, creating a large electrified smoke cloud. Afterward, Marnak appears to have been struck by the attack as he slumps to the ground. The mage explains that the divine power he senses from Marnak isn't from the goddess that the other gravekeeper worshipped, the goddess of preservation. However, the blessing on that priest outfit works very well, indicating that Marnak must have become a worshipper of an evil spirit, just like him. Marnak glares at him with eyes fueled by rage and tells him to shut his trap, but this only confirms to the mage that indeed, this is what he has become, the very thing he swore to destroy. One day, Marnak summons the giant beast and tells him one last time to shut up. The mage finds Marnak's authority quite interesting, but since his left arm is missing once again, he decides he can take one of theirs, and that would be just perfect. The beast attempts to punch the mage, resulting in a large green explosion upon impact. However, Marnak sneers as the mage has simply blocked the attack and is now smiling triumphantly. Rising to his feet, Marnak makes a solemn vow to himself and his Shantux. Tonight, he will kill the mage known as Riverkle, no matter what. Elsewhere in the town, Marnak's party grapples with the zombified people now driven by an insatiable hunger for flesh. Dakia turns to Sajida, inquiring about the status of the zombie and whether it's truly dead. Sajida confirms that the creature is not dead yet. Carmen interjects, urging them to hasten to the castle, possibly the only refuge available amidst the chaos. Concerned for Marnak's safety, Dakia asks about his whereabouts, fearing he might be caught up in the turmoil. Sajida reassures Dakia, stating that Marnak is not one to succumb easily to such threats, urging them to prioritize their own safety and find a way out as swiftly as possible. Eventually, amidst the fires, rubble, and scattered bodies, they reach the Lord's castle. Observing the unscathed castle, Carmen infers that the Lord isn't to blame for the zombified state of the people. Sajida seizes their attention, emphasizing that regardless of the circumstances, they must eliminate these threats, and as one approaches, Sajida swiftly dispatches it with a precise chest stab, ensuring a swift and likely painless end. He implores the others that if they ever hope to escape this city's deadly trap, they must continue to eliminate the threats, even if the victims revive upon death. He tells Dakia that if she truly desires survival and a reunion with Marnak, she must perceive it as simply dispatching meat, not people. Meanwhile, a horde of zombies rushes toward their location, drawn by the commotion. Sajida informs them that he will be leading the way, but emphasizes that both Carmen and Dakia shouldn't falter. Dakia suddenly smiles and pulls out her blade, slashing the first zombie that approaches. Carmen feels encouraged by Sajida's leadership, and with determination, they all proceed towards the castle gates. However, amidst the chaos of battle, Sajida notices something peculiar, a strange beast emitting a purple light among the countless zombies. Amidst the dust clearing, he catches sight of Marnak and wonders if it's really him. Meanwhile, in the midst of Marnak and Riverkle's intense battle, the purple-haired girl suddenly appears behind Reverkal. She observes the conflict with excitement, curious about the extent of his abilities. The short-haired woman proposes discussing matters, suggesting they are all followers of evil spirits. However, the girl swiftly rejects this idea, insisting that she has long awaited the opportunity to witness this particular priest in action and cannot afford to miss any part of the spectacle. Marnak remains stoic and commands the beast to attack. With a mighty punch and a resounding roar, the beast shatters Reverkal's barrier into small fragments, clearing the way for Marnak to charge forward. Engaged in battle, they both display their distinct fighting styles, almost like a choreographed dance, dodging and striking simultaneously. After a while, Reverkal taunts Marnak, questioning if he has anything else in his arsenal besides throwing his sword around and using his fists. Marnak receives guidance from his mother, and Reverkal advises him to temper his aggression, indicating that the battle is far from over. Suddenly, a spear materializes, hurtling straight towards Reverkal's head. Unaware, Reverkal fails to notice it, and the spear strikes him, cleanly severing his head from his body. Marnak's eyes widen in disbelief as his object of obsession is suddenly gone, and he recognizes the spear that took Reverkal's life. He gazes in the direction from which it was thrown and locks eyes with Sajida, the one who hurled the spear. Their brief exchange is interrupted as Sajida becomes overwhelmed by zombies, forcing him to flee. Marnak stands unmoved by the chaos around him. He recalls reading somewhere that revenge is ultimately futile, but even so, he didn't anticipate feeling this sense of worthlessness and emptiness. While he didn't expect a dramatic or grand conclusion, he also didn't envision such an abrupt and lonely ending. With these thoughts weighing heavily on him, Marnak turns his attention to the mother of corruption and offers her Reverkal's lifeless body. However, to his astonishment, Reverkal's body begins to surge with divine power, suggesting he might still be alive despite the loss of his head. Reacting quickly, Marnak revs up his sword and reclaims Reverkal's right arm before anything further unfolds. The short-haired woman's voice fills with panic as she declares they are in serious trouble, emphasizing her earlier advice to resolve the situation peacefully instead of resorting to violence. In contrast, the purple-haired girl's excitement peaks, finding the chaos thrilling, and she eagerly requests Marnak to perform his slashing move once more. Before she can continue, the short-haired woman forcefully pulls her away, admonishing her to be silent. She explains that when Reverkal is in such a state, he cannot discern between friend and foe, making him incredibly dangerous. Upon hearing this warning, Marnak instructs the beast to overto those two, and afterwards it can return back to his domain. Complying with Marnak's command, the beast picks him up. Meanwhile, the purple-haired girl protests vehemently, threatening harm to the woman if she doesn't let her go. In response, the short-haired woman insists that she quiet down at this moment as she is extremely loud for no reason. Suddenly, something streaks past them and lands in front, causing the woman to worry. She looks to see what it is and confirms that it is Marnak. He asks what they plan to do now that they are in this predicament. The purple-haired girl steps out from behind the short-haired woman and declares that she will explain. Introducing herself, she says her name is Pearly, while the short-haired woman beside her is named Bina. Despite Bena's attempts to stop her from speaking, Pearly continues, revealing that they belong to a secret society of evil spirit worshippers known as Lideratio. Pearly tells Marnak that if he searches his memory, he can probably recall the other evil spirit worshippers he has previously killed in Kelton. Marnak confirms that he remembers all of them quite clearly. Pearly explains that all of those individuals were also part of their organization, Lideratio. She reveals that this is the main reason they have been patiently waiting for him in this place. Marnak walks toward them and asks how many people are in their organization. Pearly admits that she doesn't know, and Bina doesn't either, explaining that she joined because she was given complete freedom to do as she pleased. Pearly suggests that if Marnak wants answers, he should ask Reverkal directly, as he was sent by Lideratio to carry out an important mission here. However, she notes that Reverkal might not be able to respond at the moment given his current peculiar state. Marnak then asks what the goal of their organization is. Bina steps forward, asserting that she will explain their goal. She states that their objective is simple and righteous, to create a world where it doesn't matter which god one chooses to worship. They seek a world where people aren't persecuted simply because they choose to worship a deity that society deems evil. Marnak questions why they would burn down the village if their goal is noble. He wonders if this action will further their cause in any way. Bina responds, expressing regret for the situation and clarifying that she didn't desire things to escalate to this point. She attributes the destruction to Reverkal's penchant for troublemaking. She explains that they came to the village to collect certain items, one of which is in the possession of Marnak. Marnak asks what item she is referring to, and Bina clarifies that she is talking about the holy relic, the marble that was inside the body of the incarnation. Marnak tightens his grip on his chained sword, realizing that his suspicions were correct. These people intend to use the holy relic, which possesses his mother's primordial power for their own purposes. He informs them that the marble they seek has simply broken. Bina, skeptical, accuses him of lying, insisting that something so precious couldn't break so easily. Marnak asserts that the marble did break despite its precious nature, and he discarded the remnants somewhere in Kelton. He then inquires if there is only one such relic. His mother listens intently. Bina hesitates to answer, but Pearly blurts out that there are 4 more, causing Marnak's mother to scream in rage. This reaction is natural, as she is the rightful owner of the sealed power within the relics. Marnak smiles at the revelation that there are 4 more relics. He then asks another question, inquiring who drove all of the citizens to insanity. Pearly quickly asserts that she wasn't responsible, as she lacks the knowledge to drive people insane. Bina attempts to scold Pearly for divulging so much information, but she doesn't get the chance as the Jigachad swiftly beheads her without remorse. Pearly, quite surprised, meets the same fate, though she remains unfazed and remarks that they will see each other again in the future. Marnak offers the corpses to his mother, but only Bena's body is consumed, as Pearly somehow remains alive. With the cause of the chaos eliminated, the village falls into a pleasant quiet. Suddenly, Carmen calls out to Marnak, noting that all the zombified villagers have collapsed. He wonders if this was his doing. Marnak confirms that it was. Sajida then asks if his spear was helpful. The Jigachad explains that it was far more helpful than he had expected, even overwhelming him with its effectiveness. Sajida expresses his relief at being able to help so much, while Marnak hopes that Sajida didn't notice the gigantic corruption beast aiding him. Marnak then tells everyone that they need to move quickly because something big is about to awaken. His words puzzle the group, and Carmen asks for clarification. Just then, the ground begins to rumble, and the air fills with the stench of death. An amalgamation of every corpse in the area rises with a single intent to kill. Marnak looks closely at the creature, his expression darkening as he realizes it is made entirely of corpses. Marnak explains that this abomination is what he was referring to when he mentioned something big was coming. He thinks about how Riverkel's annoying hobby of causing trouble persists even after death, as he has gathered all the corpses in the village to form this grotesque and pathetic creature. Marnak comments that such an authority suits an ugly person like Riverkel perfectly, and his mother agrees with this assessment. Turning to Dakia, Marnak acknowledges that she is saddened by the necessity of bloodshed, but he promises to comfort her once they are finished here. He encourages her to be strong for now. Dakia smiles and asks how he plans to comfort her. Marnak replies that he will think about it, but first they need to stall for time to save the remaining people. Carmen inquires if stalling for time means someone will come to help them. Marnak confirms that yes, he is certain that a particular someone will come to their aid. The Trumpeter of Rest arrives at the village gates, catching Sajida's attention. He realizes that the person they had been waiting for is already here. As the Trumpeter blows his horn, the undead within the village spring into action, rushing toward the beast made of bodies. Slowly but surely they climb up and feast on its flesh, rendering the beast helpless. The 4 observe this scene, and Dakia, pointing at the Trumpeter, remarks that it seems the person who hates the undead is coming to them. Marnak confirms this, and the Trumpeter stops when he is within speaking range. He then addresses the 4 of them, expressing his desire for the most agile member of the group to take the spear he is holding and stab the heart of the beast. Marnak accepts the spear from the Trumpeter and inquires if he also has a sword. The Trumpeter remains silent for a moment before handing Marnak a sword bearing the same style as the spear. Marnak is pleasantly surprised by the Trumpeter's ability to create items so quickly. He then asks if the Trumpeter can also create 2 more swords and some arrows. The Trumpeter appears perhaps annoyed by Marnak's constant requests. However, he summons the respective items while advising Marnak to state all his requests at once, as they don't have much time to waste. They all get equipped, with Sajia wielding the spear, Carmen armed with the bow and arrows, and Dakia wielding one of the swords. Dakia swings the sword around, remarking on its lightness, a sentiment echoed by Marnak. He finds the weapon to be of high quality, its sharpness formidable as it's crafted purely from bones and imbued with the divinity of the Trumpeter. Against the undead, especially a creature as vile as the beast, it promises to be very effective. The Trumpeter approaches Marnak and explains the plan. He will immobilize the creature for a brief period, during which they have to attempt to stab its heart. If successful, the rewards will be the very weapons they currently hold. Marnak agrees to the plan, and the Trumpeter blows his horn as they all prepare for battle. The noise reverberates throughout the area, reaching the beast, which is still under assault by the undead. Suddenly, the corpses explode into liquid, covering the beast. Dakia observes this and remarks that the Trumpeter is melting all the bodies he brought with him. Marnak watches with a certain disdain as the beast convulses, attempting to move. He understands more than Dakia does. The Trumpeter is melting the corpses only to solidify them again. At this moment, Marnak believes the trumpeter to be worse than any of the evil spirit worshippers. The trumpeter informs them that he only deals with the vessels who have been presented with rest. He explains that the weapons will guide them to the location of the heart and urges them to run and complete their task as quickly as possible. Marnak feels a pang of regret that he cannot discuss the matter further, but he knows there's no time to spare. With an important task at hand, they all rush towards their objective, Marnak leading the charge. He senses that any further delay could lead to dire consequences. The beast attempts to strike them, but its movements are hindered by being stuck in place. This encourages Dakia to run even faster. However, as she speeds towards their goal, corpses from the beast begin to descend upon her, catching her off guard. Thankfully, Carmen swiftly intervenes, clearing out every approaching corpse. Dakia, now filled with confidence, declares that she will work alongside Carmen to take down the beast from below. Marnak agrees and instructs Sajida, who is beside him, to pierce the heart while he distracts the head. Sajida agrees and they both move to their designated positions. Despite the beast's attempts to hinder them with the countless bodies as a mass, they easily outmaneuver them with their skills. Marnak reflects that his choice to target the head specifically is not arbitrary. His mother informed him that there is a chunk of divinity in the middle of the head. Plus the ugly face of the monster looks like the man who took away one of his dearest friends, the despicable mage Reverkal. Marnak resolves that this time he will make sure to destroy him. Sajida diligently works to locate the heart while Marnak engages in a final showdown with Reverkal. Charging up his sword attack with all his might, Marnak unleashes a flurry of slashes, decimating the head until only a single eye remains. With ease, the Jika-Chad dispatches the remaining eye, ensuring that every trace of Reverkal is eradicated. He can now claim that he has avenged his friend as he should have, by utterly destroying Reverkal. Meanwhile, Sajida finally finds the heart and pierces it. Instantly, the beast reacts, signaling its impending demise. Dakia observes as countless bodies begin to fall from the sky, and the beast slowly begins to come apart. Eventually, it explodes into a pool of green substance, and the matter from the bodies falls to the ground. Marnak watches from below, holding the orb that contains divinity. With this victory, he feels a sense of triumph. With a bittersweet pang, he remembers his fallen friend, now fondly recalling that he has at last avenged Shantux's death. Dakia and Carmen join him, asking if he's injured in any way. Marnak inquires about Sajida's whereabouts, and just then, Sajida appears, admiring the spear he holds. The trumpeter arrives and tells Marnak to come with him alone, leaving everyone else behind. As they walk to a more secluded area, Marnak wonders why the trumpeter wishes to speak with him alone. Has he discovered Marnak took the marble, or perhaps he has learned of his affiliation with the evil spirit worshippers? Suddenly, the trumpeter stops walking and Marnak senses a shift in the atmosphere. His mother urges him to prepare himself, and the trumpeter confirms that it's coming. Marnak feels the overwhelming presence and realizes exactly what it is, a being of immense power, beyond anything humanity can comprehend. It is a part of God that has descended to their mortal plane, the divine trumpeter of death and rest. The imposing figure of the trumpeter of death and rest directs its attention to Marnak, uttering a single word, capital. With that, it departs, leaving Marnak stunned. As the trumpeter's influence fades, Marnak slowly regains his senses, and the possession he experienced subsides. Surprised by the abrupt departure of the divine trumpeter of death and rest after uttering just one word, Marnak stands above the trumpeter and inquires if he has something to say. The trumpeter gazes downward and admits that he cannot know and he do not wish to know. This response elicits a smile from Marnak, who offers a helping hand to the trumpeter, suggesting they return. As they walk, Marnak asks if the trumpeter can clean up around the Erratico, utilizing the undead he commands as they could prove useful. Initially hesitant, the trumpeter explains that aiding the living isn't among his sworn duties. However, he's overcome by a strange sensation, reminiscent of the possession Marnak experienced earlier. Curious, he asks how he can assist. The Giga-Chad explains that he only needs help finding survivors and relocating them to the stable buildings. The trumpeter blows his horn once more, and the undead beings begin moving again, which initially startles Dakia, but she quickly calms down. Marnak then requests the trumpeter to move any useful goods to the buildings as well. He explains that leaving them behind would only result in them being destroyed or stolen, so it's crucial to preserve them. The trumpeter blows his horn once again to do that, but as he does, Marnak asks him again to extinguish the fires as well. Even the typically calm trumpeter appears slightly irked by Marnak's piecemeal requests and tells him to state all the requests at once. Nevertheless, all the tasks are completed eventually. As the trumpeter prepares to depart, Marnak presents him with the right arm of an evil spirit worshipper as a token of gratitude. The trumpeter gazes at the offered arm for a few moments before departing with the dead into the distance. Dakia expresses her surprise, noting that she would never have expected a recluse like the trumpeter to assist them. Marnak responds that the trumpeter was simply a very kind and helpful person. Dakia speculates that perhaps someone else had also asked him for help, and Marnak confirms that he did, though he never anticipated the trumpeter would actually assist them. Dakia gratefully takes Marnak's hand and thanks him for his help, acknowledging how beneficial it was. Meanwhile, Marnak's mother continues to scream "kill," a reaction that, under the circumstances, is understandable. Later that night, while staying at an inn, the mother of corruption appears in her full form and attempts to extract the divinity from the orb, though she struggles considerably. Marnak ponders what might have happened and reflects on the trumpeter's cryptic message, pointing at him and saying "capital." He speculates whether the trumpeter meant that a holy relic is situated in the capital. If true, it implies that the trumpeter knows Marnak is a priest of corruption, which could be dangerous. Curious, Marnak asks his mother if she knows anything about the strange god they encountered earlier. She replies that she doesn't know anything about him. This makes Marnak think that the trumpeter's remark that he cannot know and he do not wish to know might imply that his identity won't be revealed. However, he wonders what is happening, as a god wouldn't casually discuss such matters with others, so why would the trumpeter contact him in this manner? Meanwhile, the mother of corruption, growing increasingly frustrated with the orb, hurls it in anger, much to Marnak's dismay. She explains that she is having great difficulty severing the divinity from the marble. Marnak reassures her, expressing his confidence in her ability to accomplish the task. However, he gently reminds her that even in her anger, throwing things around is not a productive way to express it. Mother notes that she just wants to be more useful to him. Marnak tells her that he is grateful that she wants to help him. He then spreads his hands and with a gentle gesture, he advises the mother of corruption that if she manages to not throw things around, no matter how frustrated she feels, she'll be 3 times more charming than she already is. She approaches him and he lifts her heart swelling with excitement and joy at his words. Mother, hopeful, asks if she will be charming to him as well after she does that. Marnak, with a hint of playfulness, says no, which shatters her world. As she begins to cry, Marnak pleads with her to listen to him until the end. He explains that she is already extremely charming to him, so it doesn't matter whether she becomes 3 times or 300 times more charming. She's already perfect in his eyes. Comforted by his words, Mother promises not to throw objects around anymore, and the issue is resolved. Meanwhile, at a tavern in an undisclosed location, the blue-haired priestess listens intently as 2 men discuss the increasing presence of evil spirit worshippers. One of them points out that the evil worshippers have infiltrated not only their kingdom but also the Eastern Kingdom, the Desert Kingdom, and the Northern Empire. With solemn concern, he recounts that both Kelton and Eratico have suffered greatly due to these malevolent followers, raising concerns about the safety of their own city. A second man offers reassurance to his companion, explaining that there's no cause for alarm as a hero has already purged the worshippers from both Eratico and Kelton, rescuing those cities. The first man interjects, questioning if he's referring to Marnak, the savior of Eratico. The second man confirms. All happy, they raise their glasses in a cheer for Marnak and his heroic exploits. The blue-haired priestess, absorbing all this information, finds it quite intriguing. Meanwhile, walking through the halls of a castle, Hilden curses the situation under his breath, as he had barely managed to convince the Lord of Eratico to capture the princess. But the interference of those evil spirit worshippers has ruined everything. Now he can only hope the Dragon Kingdom prince won't unleash his inevitable fury on him. However, he knows the prince will be even more furious if he doesn't show up, so he has no choice but to face him. Summoning his courage, Hilden knocks sharply on the door of the prince's chambers. The prince, his anger barely concealed, glaring at the door, allows Hilden to enter. Elsewhere, in a distant locale, a bandit begs for mercy as Marnak presses a blade against his throat. Fuming with rage, Marnak demands to know what did the bandit told him earlier, to surrender all his possessions. Terrified, the bandit pleads for his life, but before he can finish his plea, Marnak ends his existence without hesitation. Dakia, clearly unhappy with all the bloodshed, expresses her discontent. Marnak responds by saying he will at least bury the bodies. He does so, but secretly offers them to Mother, noting that he has amassed almost 4,000 divinity, largely due to the numerous bandits who have dared attack them. With this out of the way, they continue their journey. Suddenly, Dakia comes closer to Marnak as she has something to ask him. She tells him that isn't blaming him for anything, so he shouldn't take this the wrong way, but he never lets any of the bandits go, and she just wants to know why. That's all. However, if he doesn't want to talk about it, he doesn't have to say anything. Marnak sighs and smiles at the same time. He asks if she also asked Carmen and Sajida, and she confirms that she did. Carmen told her that since the bandits attacked them first and were clearly armed and willing to bring harm, they most likely go after innocent people too, and that is something he can't let happen. Sajida, as usual, said that he is only fulfilling his duty, but he can try to spare them if that is what she wishes. Marnak tells her that in his case he believes in the potential of people. Dakia is quite puzzled by this, but asks if he is talking about how even those bandits can be reborn in some way. Marnak confirms that it is precisely so. He firmly believes that even those bandits have the possibility to repent and start living good lives without bloodshed and seek peace. Dakia angrily asks then why he isn't sparing them, and the Jigachad explains that the first time is always hard for anything in life, so it is more likely that they will go down the path of darkness once again than repent, and that is why he kills them without mercy. Dakia ponders the situation heavily and asks if they really have the right to bestow judgment upon them like this. Even the gods, who seem omnipotent, don't seem to have a clear vision about this topic. The mother of corruption whispers to Marnak, and he reassures her that he knows she has permitted him to do as he wishes. Marnak continues explaining Dakia that he is not killing them to bestow judgment, but he is only taking responsibility for the choices he has made. If he spares any evil, and that evil once again commits harm, harming innocent lives in the process, some of the responsibility would weigh on his shoulders afterward. So he would much rather bear the responsibility for taking their lives and thereby depriving their chances at repenting in this life. He has no idea about what he might pay for committing so many killings, but no matter what it is, this is the choice that he has made, and he has to live with it, no matter what. To spare an evil man who then goes on to murder innocents is something that, in his eyes at least, is unforgivable. He thinks that if he can't take that responsibility until the very end, then no matter how much potential an evil person has for change, he promised to himself that he will never spare any of them. Dakia fiddles with her hair for a bit and asks if he can perhaps tell her why he thinks like this, only if he wants to, of course, as she isn't forcing him into anything. Marnak says that he certainly will, but they will probably have to save it for later. Meanwhile, a group of merchants approaches them. Sajia recommends that they meet them as they will certainly have a variety of useful items, and they also might be able to sell the equipment that they looted from the bandits to them. They do so, and much later, while in a camp set up by the merchants, one of them analyzes Marnak's sword with great excitement. The merchant comments that the metal is made of is extremely nice. It is an immortal alloy imbued with the essence of the ancient empire and its technology. He adds that he has never seen a sword that has so much immortalium in it, and he almost lost it for a second there. Carmen notes that he must be talking about the metal of immortality, but the merchant is extremely excited and comments that it is not just regular immortalium, it is a whole mass of immortalium, and that is more than double the amount he has collected for well over 120 years, as it is extremely rare. He would like to buy it no matter the cost, but Marnak tells him that he is not selling it. The merchant understands it full well, and Carmen says that he must have another reason for inviting them to stay here. The merchant explains that he would like to employ them as his guards until they all reach the Northern Kingdom's capital. He tells them that they mentioned that they went through Eradico, which was almost eradicated entirely, so then he, who wears the priestly robes, must be Gis's demon slayer, the arch-nemesis of the evil spirits, Priest Marnak. Marnak is embarrassed by all of this praise. The merchant explains that should they accept this job, they will all be rewarded well and promise better treatment than the other mercenaries they have employed. Carmen asks for some time to discuss it amongst themselves, and the merchant gives them that time but looks forward to them accepting the offer. Later that night, while Marnak is giving a massage to Mother, he notes that since they accepted this well-paying job and all, they should look for a nice place to live once they have the money. Suddenly, screams can be heard from the outside as countless giant bats have invaded their camp. Marnak protects Mother and is prepared to face anything for her. The giant bats continue their attacks, with the party trying their best to defend the merchants, specifically Marnak and Carmen, who are in the front lines. Dakia also tries to help a merchant by attempting to shoot a fireball, but before she can even gather enough mana to do it, a sword cuts through the bat's head and the merchant runs freely. The sword was thrown by Marnak, who wanted to stop Dakia and succeeded. He tells her not to cast spells, stating that a mage spell from an ally who cannot control their power is more dangerous than an enemy's spear. Dakia gets angry and tells him that it's not so bad as it seems. Maybe she could have just hit one of the bats in the air if she aimed well. Marnak says that bats can fly and they are much harder to predict in the air, and there is no real guarantee that a magic spell that missed its target won't find another, maybe even an ally. So he asks her to refrain from casting spells from now on. Dakia continues to pout but agrees that it is dangerous. Later, Marnak finds his way to the merchant leader with the sword still unsheathed, which is dripping blood on the carpet. The merchant notes that he would like for Marnak to put that rather handsome sword in its sheath, but the Jigachad explains that it will depend on his answers. The merchant perceives the gravity of the situation and acknowledges that he better answer wisely if that's the case. Marnak tells him to think carefully before responding as things could get messy. His first question is why evil spirit worshippers are attacking a merchant organization seemingly out of the blue. The merchant initially tries to play it off, claiming he doesn't really know. However, when Marnak raises his sword, the merchant surrenders and admits that he will trust him with this information, considering Marnak's renowned reputation. Satisfied, Marnak sheathes his sword, hoping that the merchant will not withhold any further information. He asks if the merchant will keep all of this a secret, and Marnak agrees, understanding the nature of mercenaries and their willingness to keep secrets. The merchant then instructs one of his subordinates to bring him the requested item, and the subordinate returns with a small golden box. Explaining further, the merchant reveals that the attacks by the evil spirit worshippers began after this particular item, the one in the golden box, was handed over to them. They were requested to bring this item straight to the capital. Marnak asks him, since it has been so long since they received the request, they must have faced many casualties, so the question arises, why didn't they just give up on the request? The merchant explains that they received immortalium as payment upfront, and they were promised even more once the delivery was complete. If he's being truly honest, he doesn't know why they would want something like this, and he sought advice from another priest, but he did not know anything either. He then presents the item to Marnak, a necklace of sorts, which shines heavily under the light. Marnak instantly feels that this is a holy relic, one that contains the divinity of the mother of corruption. He realizes that this must be why the evil spirit worshippers want the item so much. However, he ponders how did they even found out about it. In his case, he has mother's hand, but how are they finding out where all of her holy relics are? The merchant asks for his opinion on the item, considering Marnak is also a priest. Marnak lies and tells the merchant that he also has no clue. He tells the merchant that now he understands the situation they are facing, but they should discuss something even more important. The merchant asks if this is about the conditions, and Marnak confirms that it is. Since he has hidden something from them which put them at risk, he thinks it's only natural that they change the conditions, and now they will need twice the amount of money that he promised them for everyone, not just him. The merchant reluctantly agrees, but taunts that instead of a priest, he should have become a merchant. Later, the party meets inside of a storage tent, and Saejida congratulates everyone on their good job. He tells them to be honest, there were already traces of battle on the guard soldiers' equipment, so they must have fought before this ambush too. Dakia expresses that Hesh would have shared this information with all of them, but Saejida explains that it was the merchants who chose to keep it away from their ears, and since they were essentially going in the same direction, they would have been caught up in the ambush anyway, even if they rejected the offer. Carmen adds that, in addition to all of this, their most benevolent priest went ahead and doubled their reward money with ease. Marnak notes that he just got them what they rightly deserve, and Dakia comments that she is glad everyone is fine though. With that, everyone goes to their individual tents as they still have a lot of travel ahead after taking a well-deserved bath. Marnak walks around in the night, and the mother of corruption suggests that they steal the relic now. He tells her that it would be terrible if he was caught doing it, but Mother reassures him, saying that as long as there are no witnesses, it's not a crime. This doesn't inspire much confidence in Marnak, who explains that they should hold back on doing things of that nature until they figure out what that sly merchant is capable of. At least she knows already that metal doesn't rot, so they will simply let the evil spirit worshippers take the item, and in the process of graciously retrieving it, they will just steal the divinity inside and give it back like nothing ever happened. The mother, impressed by Marnak's cunning, tells him that he is extremely smart. Marnak tries to continue talking with her, but that's when one of the soldiers screams that there is another ambush. Marnak laments this timing as he had just finished cleaning himself. A large bipedal creature with devilish horns charges forward, instantly taking care of the soldiers who couldn't do much in the first place. It goes straight for Marnak, who recognizes the creature as a carpal, and so he prepares a wide attack, putting all of his force behind it. When the creature gets close enough, he unleashes it, but surprisingly, the beast's very tough horns block his sword. Marnak continues to push, his determination unyielding, until eventually he manages to cut through the horn and decapitate the creature. With that finished, something else catches his attention as a bush radiates pink energy. Something jumps out of it and instantly goes for him. In that split second, Marnak manages to catch the woman that was ready to pounce on him. It turns out to be Pearly, one of the evil spirit worshippers that he has killed earlier. While Marnak seizes Pearly by the neck, she appears surprisingly exhilarated to reunite with him. Expressing her enthusiasm, she admits to having thought about him frequently and wonders if he might have done the same. Marnak confirms that he didn't think about her a single time, and she says that it's okay, as she thought about him enough times to make up for it. Marnak laments having to deal with this pipsqueak again and tells her there is something he would like to ask her. In turn, she asks him what she will receive for this information. The scene cuts, and with the arrival of more Carpal, Marnak remains vigilant, fending off the attacking beasts. The party joins in to assist, which makes things a whole lot easier for Marnak. Carmen spots that one of the beasts is trying to get away, and Marnak offers himself to take care of it. So he is running for it, but the beast is fast, and it doesn't seem that he can catch up by normal means. He chooses to throw the other sword at it, and it manages to hit, killing the beast instantly. With that done, he walks away to the spot where Pearly is, who is quite mad that he is late. Nevertheless, she inquires if now that he's arrived, he'll be granting her wishes. Marnak doesn't know what she's talking about and tells her that first she will be answering his questions. She agrees, and Marnak asks how many evil spirit worshippers are part of this ambush. Pearly gets to counting and comes to the conclusion that there are 3, excluding her, of course. However, they make her a bit mad as they are all acting like she's not there, which is very mean if she's being honest. Marnak thinks that she's just telling the enemy all of this information for free, basically, so if she were an ally, he also would just ignore her. He agrees with her that they are mean and also asks why they are attacking the merchant group, although he already knows. She says that it's because of the necklace that the merchant leader has, which makes Marnak ask how she knows about the item in the first place. She tells him that she hasn't a clue, but she does know that the person who requested for the merchant to take the necklace was also a part of Liberatio, the organization of evil spirit worshippers she told him about when they first met. Marnak finds it peculiar, sensing that Liberatio might be experiencing internal conflict of some sort. He wonders about the cause behind it. Pearly tells him that it's not as bad as it seems. It's just a slight argument not to be taken seriously. Marnak asks what caused this, but Pearly doesn't remember, even if she was told why. Marnak wonders if she's on any side at all, but she explains that she is neutral and does things only when she's given money or materials. Marnak asks why she would need materials, and Pearly notes that it's for her dolls, as she is a priestess that worships the Great Shaking String. Marnak thinks about it and comes to the conclusion that the thing in front of him right now and the thing that he met last time were both dolls. Pearly also remembers to tell him to watch out, as the guys that came with her were planning something without her, of course. Marnak sits in silence for a short while and finally asks why she is being so nice to him. Pearly is pleasantly surprised that he actually asked her that and notes that it's an entirely different question from the ones he was asking. Marnak just looks at her and then turns his back away, saying that he's not interested anymore. This makes her grovel on the ground, as she wanted him to ask, so he should have. She asks him if he doesn't want to find out. Marnak tells her that she should just tell him what she wanted to ask of him now while he is still here, but she refuses, saying that she will do that the next time they meet. Marnak smiles and notes that if it's so, this will be goodbye for now, at least. He cuts off the head of the doll, and Pearly wishes him farewell while the head of the doll is flying around. Eventually, Marnak arrives at the camp, and just when he's about to get into his tent, Dekia stops him. He asks what she wants, as she should rest while she can, since they don't know when the evil spirit worshippers will attack again. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button, as today's like goal is 1,500 likes. Comment part 2 down below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.